forget to hit record? Okay. Let me get a few more out of the waiting room. And today, as I mentioned, we are here to do your Cram course. Now, understanding I am open for questions. I'm always open for questions. But as the name of the Cram course implies, I want to get as much information at you guys as I can. Now, I don't know where you are in your class. I don't know what you've covered and what you haven't. The point of the Cram course is for you guys to hear it twice. So if you've already discussed it with Nancy, it'll be a good review. If you haven't made it that far with Nancy yet, then you hear it here first. Don't get excited. You'll hear it again in Nancy's class. Everybody with me? So if we cover something that's brand new information to you today, it's okay. We're still trying to get you all the information that we can, and hopefully you guys hear it twice. So I am recording, and welcome for those of you just joining us. If you're just joining us, we are recording what'd I say? the recording of the video, my PowerPoints, and a little quiz that I'm getting ready to talk more about will be available this afternoon, as long as I have your email address. So if you haven't already, please give me your email address in the chat. And if you don't want everybody to have it, you have the option to hit a private chat and just send it to me. And I'll send all that out to you later this afternoon, tomorrow morning at the latest. So just real quick, I'm Julie Campbell. Some of you know me. For those of you I know, hey, it's good to see you again. If I don't know you, then hey, it's good to meet you. So I like people, and I like seeing you guys. I miss being face to face. I cannot walk up to you and shake your hand, but that's okay. We're getting more used to this Zoom world, I guess, because it's here to stay. If you need me for any reason, I'm always available. I always make myself available. So just real quick, here's my email and my phone number. Feel free to text me or email me. I know my email address is long, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Because who am I? I am Julie, the real estate instructor at gmail.com. So as long as you do that little cough and get the rest of it, then you'll know who to send the email address to. Just to give you a quick history about myself, what month is this? I'm getting ready to celebrate 21 years in the industry. I have an administrative background. I was many years was the behind the scenes person, taking care of the agents, letting the agents go take care of everybody. And then probably about 6 years, I decided I was tired of watching the agents have all the fun. So I went out and got my license and jumped into sales, and somewhere along the line picked up this teaching thing. So today I wear two hats. There's sales me and there's teacher me. And sometimes I really have to stop and think about what hat I'm wearing. What am I doing today? What am I doing at this moment? But I figure it out. I do all right. So just a brief background. You guys have my email and phone number, and I'm guessing I have your email. If I don't have your email, then I cannot send you the email. Makes sense, yes? Okay, so make sure I have your email. So we agreed. We're just ready to jump in and get started. Primarily, where this class is coming from is license law and commission rule comments. If you do not have your book with you, that's okay. If you do not have your book with you, just make a note on your page there, starting on page 707 of your textbook. If you do have your book, then you can turn to page 707. And we're not necessarily going in that order, but I just want to give you the information where we are finding the information from the course today. 707 of your textbook is the comments of the license law and commission rule. Have you guys ever sat down and tried to read law? Boring. So one thing I like about this section starting on page 707 is it takes the law and the rule and it maybe makes it a little bit easier to read. I don't suggest doing this section in one setting. I think break it up into sections, maybe 10 minutes here, a section there, however you want to do it. But again, I'm not necessarily going in this order on the book, but this is where most of our content is coming from today on page 707. So let's start and talk about what your license makes you. First off, let's say what your license doesn't make you. Once you guys pass your state exam, you get your real estate license, yay, you are a broker. Having your license does not make you a realtor. Once you're a broker, then you can take that a step further. You can join the National Association of Realtors. And once you're a member of the National Association of Realtors, then you can call yourself a realtor. If you don't join NAR and you don't pay those membership dues, you cannot call yourself a realtor. You're just a broker. And in North Carolina, we are all brokers. In North Carolina, we are a brokerage state. There are different classifications of brokers, though. Provisional brokers, soon to be you guys. You pass that class, pass your state exam, and you get a real estate license, you're provisional brokers. I call you guys my brokers with training wheels. We'll talk a little bit more about provisional brokers in just a second and what that will mean for you soon. Once you drop your provisional status, which I will talk about in just a second, drop your provisional status, you're just a broker, full broker. And then at some point in your career, you may decide to go further and become the broker in charge. You can be BIC eligible, or you can be the designated broker in charge. And again, we're getting ready to talk a little bit more about all of these. What I want you guys to get from this slide is that we are all brokers. There's just different classifications. There's just different levels of that brokerage. So let's talk first about the boss, the broker in charge. Every firm, and you know what? Right off the bat, I just see an error on my PowerPoint. Oh my goodness, this is early to be doing this. Not every firm, every office must have a designated broker in charge. Well, I guess that's kind of right. Never mind if I'd read the whole sentence, hey. What I need you guys to get from this, every office location has to have a designated broker in charge. So let's say you have a firm that has 5 office locations. How many designated broker in charges do you need? You can show me on your hands. You need 5. That's right. You need 1 under each roof. Everybody with me? So each roof has a designated broker in charge. So I guess that's not an edit, but kind of sort of. I got my point across. How you become the designated broker in charge is you first have to become BIC eligible. Anybody that is BIC eligible can become the designated broker in charge. Again, we need 1 under each roof. So how do you become BIC eligible? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's a little ways away for you guys, but still, you may want to have dreams, have goals. The requirements to be BIC eligible, well, first off, you have to have a license on an active status. You can't be a provisional broker. That makes sense, yes? You have to have some experience to be the broker in charge. They say you have to have 2 years within the last 5 years, or 4-year part-time within the last 5 years. How they determine full-time and part-time, I honestly have no idea, but somehow they determine that you have the experience. This is what they're looking for here, is field experience. So you can assist other brokers in your office. And then there's a 12-hour BIC course that you have to complete. So once you become BIC eligible, then you're in a position to become the designated broker in charge. We're going to talk a little bit more about the BIC later, the BIC's responsibilities. But right now, I just want to focus on one of the BIC's biggest responsibilities is soon to be you guys. As a provisional broker. All right, let's back up for a second. You go to your state exam, you pass your state exam, and you get your real estate license. Yay, mini celebration, right? Once you're handed your real estate license, congratulations. Here's a license on inactive status that you cannot do anything with. Good job. Does anybody know how you activate your provisional broker license? How do you have an active PB license?
After you do your post-licensing.
You affiliate with a firm. You have a BIC agree to take you under your wing. So everybody's good with that. Good job. Inactive until you affiliate as a provisional broker. Once you affiliate with the provisional broker, the BIC becomes responsible for you and all your actions. If you get yourself in trouble with the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, you will take your BIC down with you, because the commission is going to feel that as a provisional broker, your BIC should have been in your back pocket watching everything that you were doing anyway. So as a provisional broker, you are a big liability to your BIC. Y'all be nice to your BICs. They're taking on a big responsibility by taking you guys on and taking you under their wings. The point of this, you guys, you don't get enough information in pre-licensing to run amok on the streets helping buyers and sellers. I don't care what avenue of real estate you're going to go in. Is it sales? Is it commercial? Is it property management? You don't have enough information in this class. So the reason they put you on provisional status is to require more training, possibly a mentorship, have somebody take you under your wing, training, education, that kind of thing. Everybody good with this? This is the start of your education, the start of your training. And trust me, it's a career-long commitment. Okay, so the BIC takes you on. That's how you activate your license. The BIC also handles the earnest money deposit, EMD, earnest money deposit for the provisional broker. We may get to the trust account later. If not, I got it covered in my PowerPoints. So again, it's all mentioned in that section starting on 707. And welcome if you're just joining us. If you're just joining us, I am recording. So if you want to copy the recording, my PowerPoints, and a little quiz that I'm getting ready to talk about, please just make sure I have your email address in the chat, and I'll be happy to send that out later this afternoon. So who needs a license in North Carolina? Well, it's kind of a formula, if you will. Whomever needs a license in North Carolina is the person that's engaging in the transfer of real property for compensation for others. You guys see 3 bullet points there? All 3 of those activities are required to have a license. So let's pretend for a second. Let's pretend that somebody is selling their home for sale by owner. If you're for sale by owner, you're not doing it for others, are you? You're doing it for yourself. So does the FSBO need a license? That's right. They do not. They do not, because all 3 activities are required. And when we talk about the transfer of real property, we can easily remember those activities revolved around that by thinking of LL Beans. The activities revolved around the transfer of real property are list, lease, buy, exchange, auction, negotiate, and sell. The transfer of real property for compensation for others. Compensation, we tend to think of money, right? We tend to think of money. Think of compensation as just something in return. Would you consider free rent something of value, for example? Would you consider free rent something of value, something of compensation? So let's say there's a duplex and you're not licensed, and the owner says you can live in one of the units, and if you help me manage the other unit, I'll let you live here rent-free. If you're living here rent-free, are you receiving compensation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're living here rent-free, do you need a license to manage the other unit?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you guys are so good. Everybody with me? All 3 activities required. What I want you guys to know is compensation isn't just money. Okay. We talked earlier about goals, where you're going to be long-term in your career. Let's fast forward a bit. At one point in your career, you may be to the place where you are ready to hire your own assistant. Doesn't that sound like a good goal to have? You need somebody to help you. You're so busy, you need help. It's a great goal to have. If you hire that assistant very well may be unlicensed. You may have somebody unlicensed assisting you. When you affiliate with your firms, you very well may have an unlicensed employee on staff assisting you guys as your administrator. There are certain activities that the unlicensed employee is allowed to do. There are things that they can't do. There are things that they can do. The unlicensed employee can do data entry. The unlicensed employee can fill in the blanks of the offer to purchase and contract, agency agreements, whatever pre-printed forms we have. They can do data entry as long as the information that they're entering was provided to them by their employing broker. So basically, their employing broker is handing them a piece of paper and saying, fill in this form. Everybody with me? It is data entry only. The unlicensed employee is not out negotiating. They're not out asking, what do you want to put in this field? The unlicensed employee could do MLS input as long as the information that they're inputting was provided to them by their broker. The unlicensed employee can put signs in the yard, lock boxes on the property. They can schedule inspections, repairs. They can provide basic information on the property. I think a good rule of thumb with this one is if the public can find it online, like at Zillow, then that's information that the unlicensed employee can provide. So do you see a listing price in Zillow or whatever your favorite website is? Do you see a listing price? Do you see the number of bedrooms?
Yes.
Do you see what else? Is there a garage? That's the kind of information that the unlicensed employee can provide. Anything beyond this, anything negotiating, they need to refer them to their broker. The unlicensed employee can show properties for rent. Please note that bullet point. The unlicensed employee cannot show properties for sale. The unlicensed employee can only show properties for rent. And they can also do trust account maintenance. They can maintain. Again, we may or may not get to that today, but if we don't, it's in my PowerPoint. So you'll have that later to review. And it's further on in that section in 707. You guys make a note in your book on page 709, the first column. If you don't have your book with you, it's okay. Just make a note. 709, the first column, is the list of what unlicensed employees can do. I highly suggest you guys look at that list before your exam next week. Excuse me. Pardon me. See what I did there? Okay. Probably one of the biggest difference in the unlicensed employee and the broker is how they're paid. The unlicensed employee cannot be paid commission. Only the real estate agent can be paid commission. The unlicensed employee is paid hourly or salary. So if you hire somebody to work for you for 10 hours a week, you pay them for 10 hours a week, regardless if you have a closing or not. If you have 4 closings this week, you cannot pay them compensation. You pay them hourly or salary. You pay them by the job, salary, however you arrange that. They don't receive commission. There's some people that are exempt from having a license. As we mentioned earlier, the for sale by owner or the for rent by owner, FRBO, for rent by owner, may that be an individual or a business, they don't have to have a license. Why? Because they're not doing it for others. They're doing it for themselves. Remember those three activities. An attorney in fact, somebody that's acting with a full power of attorney, maybe for an elderly parent, for example. Attorney in fact is not required to have a license. An attorney at law is not required to have a license to do their job. The attorneys at law, the closing attorney's job is to, do the title search, process the closing, get the new deed ready, that kind of thing. They don't need a license to do their job. If that attorney at law wants to assist their buddy in buying a house, now they have to have a license. Okay, so the attorney at law is exempt from being a closing attorney. A trustee, somebody acting under a court order, maybe a guardian, an executor of a will, is not required to have a license. Salaried employees are not required to have a license. And then anybody that's an employee of the housing authority when dealing with properties owned by the housing authority, not required to have a license. So there are some exceptions. So I've mentioned something about this little quiz earlier. What we've done, or what I've done, is gone through my PowerPoints, and I got you guys some test questions. We're getting ready to put one up. The problem is when I say to you my PowerPoints, you already know what the answer is. So it doesn't help you to take these little quizzes in the PowerPoints. So the little quiz I talked about that I'm going to include in my email are these questions that you guys are getting ready to see with the answers separate. So we're going to go through some of them in class. We won't get through all of them. What I want you guys to do now, though, before I put up a little test question, set your chats to just send me a chat. Send me a direct message, just me. So when you click on the 2 you guys see in that chat, and you can send a chat to everyone, or you can select who in the class you send a chat to. I should be near the top as the host. So you can set a direct message just to me. And I'm getting ready to put a question on the board. And I would like all of you to tell me in a private message, A, B, C, or D. And these are the quizzes that I'll send, or the quiz that I'll send this afternoon. Everybody ready? Direct message ready? So let's put a question up. Tell me in a private chat, A, B, C, or D. You got 10 more seconds to weigh in. When you guys are taking practice tests, when you guys are taking your exam next week, when you're at your state exam, I need you guys to actually read the question. Read the question. The first thing I want you to do is read the question. Have you guys done enough practice quizzes to know by now how tricky some of these questions can be? Have you guys done enough by now to know how one word can change the meaning of everything? Isn't that amazing how that works? One word changes everything. So I want you guys first just to slow down, take a big deep breath, and just read the question and really focus on what the question's asking you. So we see this test question and we say, which of the following would require a North Carolina real estate license, according to commission rule? And then I want you to go through and actually read the answer choices, right? Don't just skim through them. If you think you found the right answer, don't not read the rest, okay? Because what you're looking for is the best answer. You may have another good answer, but you're looking for the best answer. So really dissect these questions and pay attention to every single word. So which of the following would require a license according to commission rule? The assistant who's holding regular open house. And open housing, doing open houses is considered a brokerage activity. Why are you doing an open house? You're trying to sell it, right? You're pretty much showing the property for sale. I noticed a couple of you, we had some D's in here. The executor is exempt as long as they're the ones mentioned. So executor of a will is exempt for a license because they're just handling this one transaction on behalf of the deceased. Questions on this one?
The agent's assistant. Can you hear me, Julie?
Yeah, hey.
The agent's assistant, they can only show rental properties, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly right. Which is why open houses, because you're pretty much showing it's a for sale, right? Right?
Yes. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that. It's easy to second guess yourself. Can I share another piece of advice with you guys? You may guys get lots of advice. You might get lots of Juliisms before the day's over. When you answer a question, very rarely, how do I want to put this? Most of the time, your first instinct is right. And when you go back and start second guessing yourself, you're convincing yourself that another answer is right. Have you guys ever changed a right answer to wrong? Let's see all those hands. If you don't have your hand up, I wonder if you're doing practice tests. It's so easy to, oh no, and then start second guessing. Well, I thought I said C, but now I'm going to second guess myself and say A. Okay. I need you guys, before you change an answer, once you say C, before you change it, I need you to be 5,000% sure before you change that answer from C, because most of the time, your first instinct is correct. See, Most of the time, your first instinct is correct. Do I need to tell you guys, back in the day when we were in person and Lane and I had to grade all these dang tests by hand, can I tell you how many times I saw right answers change wrong? Can I tell you how many times I knew people to fail this test because they changed too many answers? Can I get you guys to promise me that you won't change it unless you're 5,000% sure? Everybody hold your right hand up. Say, Julie, I promise. Unless you are 5,000% sure, I need you guys to stick with your first instinct. Okay. First piece of free advice for the day. We'll see how many more of those you get. All right. So let's switch gears just a bit and let's talk about the whole reason we're here. The whole purpose we're here. We're here because the North Carolina Real Estate Commission says that we have to be. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission is a government entity, and it's so important that we understand their main purpose. Is the Real Estate Commission's main purpose to give you a license so you can have lots of transactions and make lots and lots and lots of money?
No.
No, unfortunately not, right? The Real Estate Commission's main purpose is to protect the public when they're working with you. How does the commission issue you a license? How do they trust that you can take care of their public? Well, first off, you got to pass their exams. You got to pass the end of class exam and you got to pass the state exam. Passing those exams prove to the commission that you have the minimum competency that you need to go out and work with their public. So one way they protect the public is by issuing your license when you've proven to them. Education. Your pre-licensing class, your post-licensing classes, which we should be able to get to post-licensing, continuing education. Those are all Real Estate Commission required courses to help keep you knowledgeable when dealing with their public. The Real Estate Commission also helps to educate the consumer. If you haven't already, make yourself a note, maybe after your exam. I don't want you guys to lose focus, but maybe after your exam, go to ncrec.gov. Or if you didn't get that, Google North Carolina Real Estate Commission. And there is a ton of information on the commission's website to help educate the public. And guess what? It's available to us as well. So don't put your cart in front of your horse. But I do think this is a great site for you guys eventually to explore and to help you learn, help you gain that knowledge when dealing with the public. So let's meet our commissioners. There are 9 commissioners. They each serve a 3-year term. I always find this interesting. At least 3 of the commissioners, at least 3 of the 9 have a real estate license, have an active real estate license. So a minimum of 3 have an active real estate license. At least 2 of the 9 are not licensed at all. So at least 2 of our commissioners are a true representative of who? The public that they're protecting. Isn't that interesting? You may have more knowledge than some of them at this point. And yeah, do we have a question? I'm hearing things now. Great. Okay. Another thing that the commission has the power to do in keeping up with protecting the public, they can discipline your license once you've been licensed. So once you get a license, you don't have a free ticket. You still have to follow the laws and the rules. And they can discipline your license. They can suspend your license for a period of time. Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 2 years. They can revoke your license, y'all. They can flat out take your license back. Bottom line, all disciplinary actions are handled on a case-by-case basis. And what the commission is ultimately asking themselves is, how badly did the licensee harm my public? Did they cost them money? Did they cost them pain and suffering? How badly did they harm my public? And that's where the disciplinary actions come from. The whole reason you guys have 75-hour pre-licensing, the whole reason you guys have 90 hours post-licensing, the information that you're getting in these classes is helpful for your career. I always feel like my job is twofold. I'm giving you the information that you need for the exam, and then I'm trying to help keep you out of real estate jail once you do get your license. Now, real estate jail is a fictional place. They're not going to actually put you in jail. But the idea is if you face disciplinary action, you could lose your license. So why is it so important that we understand the license law and commission rule? Because we want you to have a long career in real estate and not worry about disciplinary action. That's what this class is about. Once you get your license, you'll have a nice, they'll send you a nice 8.5 by 11. You can go to Hobby Lobby and get a frame for it. You worked hard for it. Go get you a frame. But in addition to your 8.5 by 11, they're also going to send you each year, you're going to get a pocket card. The pocket card is your proof of licensure. So every year that you renew, and we'll talk about the renewal period in just a second. Every year that you renew, they'll issue you a new pocket card. You need to have your pocket card on you at all times. It's a nice little piece of paper that you can cut out and stick in your wallet. Or they also have a digital card available. If you're kind of a nerd like me, I carry both around just so I'm ready. I have my wallet and my phone with me everywhere I go, so I'm always prepared. Your firm also gets a license when your firm has to have a real estate license, so they display their license. And when you guys get your license, you're going to get a 6-digit number. Go ahead and memorize that 6-digit license number, because you're going to use that number everywhere you go in real estate. I often joke that the Real Estate Commission has no clue who Julie Yates Campbell is, but they do know who 264172 is. So you need that number. Put it on a flashcard if you have to, but go ahead and memorize that number, because everything you sign, all your contracts, your disclosures, agency agreements, everything will include your license number. So we mentioned the renewal period of the Real Estate Commission. First off, it's important that we understand that the Real Estate Commission doesn't operate on a calendar year. The Real Estate Commission's year is a physical year. And the Real Estate Commission's physical year is July 1st to June 30th every year. Licensees have what's called a renewal period. The renewal period is May 15th to June 30th every single year. The renewal period is when we all have to renew our license. Failure to renew your license by 11:59 p.m. on June 30th means at the stroke of midnight on July 1st, your license is expired. Can you practice on an expired license? Everybody shake your head no, you cannot. So you have this 45-day window to renew your license. How you renew your license every year is by paying the renewal fee. The renewal fee. The renewal fee, I don't know, for the last however many years has been $45. So you have a 45-day window to pay your renewal fee. Paying your renewal fee will keep your license current. When you guys see the word current, I actually want you to see the word currency, or just think about, there we go, money. Your license is current because you paid the renewal fee. Don't pay the renewal fee, it's expired. There are a couple different categories of a current license. We'll talk about those in just a second. A current license has everything to do with paying the fee. It has nothing to do with education. Everybody with me? So why are you current? Because you have shown them the money. Okay. Once you get your license, you'll have a login to the Real Estate Commission's website. You'll have your own account. You can log in and pay your license pay your renewal fee right online. So May 15th to June 30th, we pay the renewal fee. Paying the renewal fee keeps our license current. A current license can be active. A current license can also be inactive. Why is it current? Because you have shown them the money. Failure to show them the money means that your license is expired. So you guys as provisional brokers, part of your application fee is going to be included in that renewal fee. So when you submit your application, you're paying that renewal fee. Does that make sense? When you get your license, let's just pretend, gosh, you guys are getting close because your exam is next week. So some of you may very well get your real estate license. I'm just going to make a date up for an example. Let's say you get your license on May 14th. Is May 14th within the renewal period?
Yes.
May 14th?
Oh, no, sorry. It's May 15th.
That's right. So if you get your real estate license on May 14th, if you're issued your license on May 14th, when's your first renewal period?
A day later.
Tomorrow. So you're going to have to pay that renewal fee. You guys see what I'm saying here? Every time you hit May 15th, you owe $45. Something for you guys to take into consideration. Some of you may want to wait until, July or whatever. Up to you. Can't answer that for you.
I have
So
a question.
current,
Oh,
yes, of course.
sorry, Julie.
Please.
So should we wait?
I can't
So
answer
does
that
that,
for you.
is that anywhere in between May 15th to June 30th in order to get that? Like, so if I got it on June the 1st, I would still have to pay that 45? Sorry.
I have a letter from the commission that addresses that very question, and I'd rather you hear it straight from the commission's mouth than mine. So when I send you guys the email this afternoon, I'll also include that letter. And it breaks down, what if you get your license from here to here? What if you get your license from here to here? So not to interrupt you, I apologize, but let the commission explain it to you because they know their rules a lot better than me. So when I send that email out this afternoon, I'll include that letter so you guys can see, what if I get my license here? What if I get my right between now and July 1st, basically, is what we need to address. Fair enough?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, of course, thank you. So a current license can be active or inactive. We'll talk about the differences in just a second. As we've been saying, failure to pay by midnight on July 1st means your license is expired. So license statuses are either current or expired. Everybody with me? A current license can be either active or inactive. If your license is active, it's because you've done two things. You paid the fee and you are up to date on your education. We'll talk about provisional brokers in just a second. Pretend PPs don't exist for just 1 second. To have an active license, to maintain an active license, you pay the fee every year and you do your CE, you do your education. Active license is the only category in which you can get paid a commission. It's the only category in which you can advertise your services in any way. Active is the only status in which you can even hand out a business card. So again, let's go back to you guys. You pass your state exam, they hand you a real estate license that's inactive. We've already decided as a provisional broker to activate your license, you have to affiliate with a firm, right? So you get your license today, you affiliate with a firm next week. You know you're going to affiliate with the firm next week. Can you go ahead and give out business cards this weekend? You cannot, because this weekend your license is inactive. You guys with me? You cannot activate your license until you've affiliated with that firm, until you have a BIC, take them under your wing. The inactive license is still a current license. It's inactive because you pay, it's inactive, you paid the fee, so it's current, but it's inactive for, could be one of a couple reasons. And the next slide is going to go over those couple reasons why it may be inactive. Active and inactive are current, meaning you've paid the fee. You cannot promote or advertise your services on an inactive license. So what are some examples of who might be an inactive license? Well, first off, you guys, once you get your license until you affiliate with a firm, this does my heart good to hear you guys say this. I also do post licensing, and I also start off with post licensing saying, tell me if your license is active or inactive. And if it's active, what firm are you affiliated with? And I have new licensees coming in saying, my license is active, no affiliation. Did they get that test question wrong? Yeah, so that's why it does my heart so good. And when I see you guys in post, you guys can all know now how to properly answer that question. If you're active, you're affiliated with a firm. If you're inactive, you're not. What if your broker in charge forgets to renew his license? What if the firm forgets to renew their license? I would find another firm if they can't do that, but that's just me. If your firm or your BIC fail to renew their license, then the firm's license goes inactive. You got to have a designated BIC. If the BIC doesn't show up to work today, if they just fall off the face of the earth, got to get somebody else in. The other way you can go inactive, you pay the fee, but you don't do CE. Remember, an active license is two pieces. You pay the fee and you do CE. Doesn't that kind of rhyme? Isn't that nice? Fee and CE. How do you keep an active license? Make a little song out of it. Fee and CE. Failure to do your CE every year by June 10th means when you wake up on July 1st, your license is inactive. We'll talk more about CE in just a second. By the way, if you just met me, when I have a bad habit, I need to break this. When I say just a second, it could be the next slide. It could be at 12:30, right? So somewhere between now and our time together, I promise I'll get to it when I say just a second. I need to work on that. If your license goes inactive, how you reinstate an inactive license depends on how long it was inactive. It depends on how delinquent you are in your education. So if you've been inactive and you haven't done CE within the last 2 renewal periods, then they are going to make you, has had CE. So you do your CE and you pay the fee. Okay, so you pay the fee to maintain an inactive license. You do the CE, you just got to submit the application form. You don't have to do anything. You're caught up on your fee, you're caught up on your CE. Maybe you just chose to be inactive for the last 2 years, but you still do your CE. If you go more than 2 years, that's what I was going before. If you go more than 2 years without doing CE, then they're going to make you get caught up on CE. Depending if it's been like 10 years, they may make you come back to do post licensing. So how much education do you have to do? It just depends on how delinquent you are. The reason for this, you guys, the rules change so frequently, so often. And the thinking here is that if you've been more than 2 years without continuing education, you're behind. If you've been 10 years without continuing education, you're really, really behind. And now they're going to make you do post. So what am I saying? Could you ride for the rest of your life on an inactive license? I'm seeing some hesitations.
No.
Could you go? You say no. I see some people saying, how do you keep an inactive license? You pay the fee. So let me ask that again. Could you ride the rest of your life on an inactive license?
Yes.
Yeah. All you have to do is send that fee in. Why in the world would you send that fee in if you don't plan on practicing real estate? Sometimes we come to forks in the road in life. Maybe you're ready to start a family. Maybe you got to care for an elderly parent. Maybe real estate needs to take a back seat. And you think, well, I'm just gonna send the fee in until I'm ready to revisit real estate. Why would you keep paying that $45 every year if you don't plan on doing CE? I'm going to answer that in just a second. So you can ride forever on an inactive license. All you have to do is show them the money. Okay. You wake up 10 years from now and say, I'm ready to get back into real estate. You're going to have to do some CE. You're going to have to do some post licensing and get caught up. Okay. Again, my suggestion is you send that $45 in every year. Just my suggestion. I'll tell you why in just a second. Failure to pay the fee means your license on July 1st is expired. I don't care if you've done CE or not. A current license has everything to do with money, It has nothing to do with education. So failure to pay the fee means when you wake up on July 1st, your license is expired. How do you reinstate an expired license? Again, it depends on how long has it been expired. You wake up on July 1st and go, holy crow, I forgot to pay my renewal fee. That's okay. Pay the renewal fee, pay the reinstatement fee, and poof, you're active again. 0 to 6 months on an expired license, pay the fees. If your license is expired 6 months to 2 years, you pay the fees. You come back and take one post-licensing class, or you go back to PSI Testing Center and take your state exam again. Ugh. So you have choices: expired 6 months to 2 years, pay the fees, and pass some kind of test. May that be post-licensing or PSI. If your license is expired for more than 2 years, and you decide you want to get back into real estate, look at the horror on y'all's face. You get to come back and start all over again. Why do I think it's worth it to send in that $45 a year?
You don't start over.
I don't want you to start over. So you guys have choices. I can't tell you what to do. But if you think you're done with real estate, may I suggest you keep sending that $45 in to keep that license inactive until you know that you're for sure that you're done. You guys, the last in-person, I can't make this stuff up, the last in-person class that I taught, last time we were actually face-to-face, I had 2 people that were in there because their license had expired. And they were just 2, and they were devastated. They're like, I cannot believe I'm sitting here again. And I'm like, is it worth it sending in that $45 every year? I think so, or whatever the renewal fee is. Put a little bit of fear in you. Again, you guys have that decision to make when you get to that fork in the road of life. Questions or comments? Current, expired, active, inactive? All right, let's put another question up. You guys tell me in a chat again, A, B, C, or D. You got 10 more seconds to weigh in. Okay. Licensee fails to pay his renewal fee by June 30th. Let's just stop for a second and ask ourselves a question. Fail to pay the renewal fee by June 30th. What's your status on July 1st? Expired, right? You're cut off. I love that. Expired. So failure to pay the renewal fee by June 30th means when you wake up on July 1st, your license is expired. Which of the following best describes the appropriate steps to cure his deficiency? A current license has everything to do with the fee. It has nothing to do with education. So the renewal fee, there's two pieces, the renewal fee. So what are we looking for? That first 6 months, 0 to 6 months. So July 1st to the end of the year, all you need to do is pay your fee, pay the reinstatement fee, submit your broker activation form, and poof, you're active again. Questions? Y'all just gonna pay the fee? Just pay the fee. It just seems easier. Just send them money, make them happy. Just send them money.
All about the money, right?
Isn't that the truth? Absolutely.
Julie, I have a quick question.
Yes,
I
please.
took a picture of it when Nancy put it up, but I took a picture with my phone and the glare is so bad. There was a change, like a note from NERC. Was that for continuing education? It was something for if you get your license between that period.
That's the letter I'm going to send you guys this afternoon. So it sounds like
Okay.
Nancy's already, yeah. So that's the letter I'll include with you guys this afternoon.
Okay.
Sounds like, yep. Once you're licensed, once you have your license, then each year after your first year, we'll talk more about that in a second, but we got to do CE every year. And our CE consists of 8 hours. They break it down into 2 4-hour classes. So there's a 4-hour update. If you're a broker or a provisional broker, then you're going to do the general update, also known as the Gen Up. If you're an eligible broker in charge or designated broker in charge, then you do the broker in charge update, also known as the Pickup. Take the appropriate update course for you. In addition, well, let me say the update course is the Real Estate Commission's opportunity to make sure all of us across the state get the same information. Last I checked, there were like 108,000 licensees across the state of North Carolina. It's a lot of people that have a real estate license. Some are active, some are inactive, but still, that's a lot of people. And the Real Estate Commission has this opportunity in the update course to get all 108,000 of us this same information each year. So the update course is the same no matter where you are in the state. And then we also have a 4-hour elective. And the elective is a topic of your choosing. So what's your niche? What do you want to learn more about? I will venture out to say there's probably a CE class about it. So you can take a CE class to, whatever you want to learn more about. That's your elective. The good news for you guys, you don't need CE until your second renewal period. You don't have to take CE your first renewal period. Is that good news? So whenever you get your license, the first time you hit May 15th, you don't have to do CE. You do have to pay the fee. Do I need to say that again? You don't have to take CE the first time. Always pay the fee. When in doubt, just pay the fee. They'll figure it out when they get down there. So you don't have to take CE until your second renewal period. Why don't you guys all unmute yourselves? All of you, let's have some fun. Let's make your family wonder what we're doing in here. All of you unmute yourselves. And why don't you guys tell me when the deadline for CE is every year? What's the deadline for CE?
June 10th.
30th.
June 10th.
30th.
June 10th.
10th. Okay, you guys can mute yourselves again. The deadline for CE every year is June 10th. The deadline to pay your renewal fee is June 30th. CE deadline is June 10th. Renewal fee deadline is June 30th. Very important dates. We need to make sure we're good on those. June 10th is the deadline for CE. Guys, here's the deal. No education provider in the entire state of North Carolina is allowed to offer CE from June 11th to June 30th. It's a blackout period. The commission doesn't allow us to offer it. because that's the time that they're processing all of our renewals. Did you hear me just say there's 108,000 licensees in the state? We're all renewing at that same time. Plus the firm has to renew, education providers have to renew, instructors have to renew. There's all sorts of stuff going on in that renewal period. There are about 40 people that work at the Real Estate Commission. So they're busy this time of year. And they cut off CE on June 10th to make sure that they have the time to process. So we're ready to go on July 1st. The deadline for
So what's the
CE is June 10th. I'm
blackout?
sorry,
What's the blackout period again?
June 11th to June 30th. No CE
Okay.
can be offered anywhere. Guys, this day, I can't. Back in my administrative days, I was kind of the lane of a real estate school. And I'm telling y'all, on June 11th, my phone was blowing up. I forgot to do CE. What do I do? Well, pay your fee. Worst case scenario, when you wake up on July 1st, your license will be inactive, right? Pay the fee, but no CE. Your license is inactive. And you will remain inactive until you can get caught up on your CE.
So it's
Most
better,
schools don't start rolling CE out again until the fall. So you are inactive until you can take CE again. Yes, ma'am.
so it's better to be inactive but never expired.
Not unless you want to come back and take pre-licensing again. That's up to you.
you.
That's entirely up to you. Okay, so June 10th, June 10th, June 10th. Y'all put that date up there with like your birthday, okay? Very important date. Questions so far? Doing good? All right, well, I need a cup of coffee. So let's go ahead and take our break. We're going to take 10 minutes. When we come back, we're going to talk about post-licensing. So it is 10 o'clock on the dot. So we'll start back right at 10:10. You are welcome to turn your camera off. You don't have to have it on to begin with, but we don't want to see what you do on break. So turn your camera off and come back at 10:10. All right. Welcome back. How's everybody doing? We doing good so far? Doing good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So much better with you.
So we're here to do a cram course today. So that's the material we're going to cover. Let's see, question comes in. What happens if you are due to close on June 15th, you forget to do classes and go inactive? Okay. All right. Question comes in. What happens if you are due to close? You're going to go to closing on June 15th and you fail to do CE. Is that how I'm understanding it? First off, understand if you fail to do CE by June 10th, your license is still active until July 1st. So if you don't do CE by June 10th, you have 20 days to get your affairs together, get it closed, right? So you would still be okay if closing's on June 15th, okay? What happens though, if you don't do CE, you pay the fee, but you don't do CE, your license goes inactive on July 1st, and you have closing scheduled for July 3rd, okay? So your license goes inactive on the 1st, and you have a closing schedule for July 3rd. The real estate commission will allow you to still get paid as long as you brokerage the majority of the deal, and on July 1st, you stop all brokerage activities. So if you're stopping brokerage activities on July 1st, can you go to closing on July 3rd with your clients?
No.
No, because your license went inactive on July 1st. So the commission may still allow you to get paid, again, if you brokerage the majority of the deal and you stop as soon as your license stops being active. The firm's policy will tell you how they're going to handle that. The commission allows it, but it's up to the firm on whether or not you'll get paid. So every firm has their own policy. All firms are different. Yep, absolutely. Good question. So we talked about CE, deadline of June 10th. Again, you guys, they start offering CE again like the fall, like August or September. So you have from August until June 10th to take CE. Don't let it get away from you. Don't wait until June 10th. Historically in real estate, we start getting busy about this time of year. So why not knock your CE out in the middle of winter when we tend to be slower anyway? And then that way you don't have to worry about it. It's behind you and you're ready to start the spring market, ready to go. If you wait till June 10th, I call you guys my risk takers, my daredevils. If you insist on waiting until June 10th to take your CE, can things happen on June 10th? I mean, what if you're taking CE via Zoom and you wake up and your internet's down? What if you're going to go CE in person and you wake up and you have a flat tire? You with me? All sorts of things can happen on June 10th. So my suggestion, again, here's another Julie piece of advice for you. My suggestion is just to get it done as soon as you can and not have to worry about it. Fair enough? As a provisional broker, you guys also have to do 90 hours of post licensing. And 90 hours of post licensing is broken down into 3 30-hour classes. You have 3 30-hour post licensing classes. You have got to complete post licensing within the first 18 months of your licensure. When you get your license, there will be a date on your license. That date starts your 18-month clock. And you have that time, year and a half, to do your 90 hours. Some new licensees are ready to affiliate with a firm and activate their license. So they get their license, they affiliate, and they start going on their new career. Again, don't let time get away from you, right? I know you're busy with buyers and sellers and closings, but don't let that time get away from you. You still have 18 months. Some new licensees prefer to remain inactive until they take their post licensing and then affiliate with a firm as a full broker. There is no wrong way to do that. It's whatever's best for you, whatever you're ready to do. Have any of you guys already started talking to firms Anybody talked to some Bics, interviewed with a couple of you? Good. So you may be more ready to go. Active or inactive as a provisional broker, it doesn't matter. It's whatever was best for you. Just do not let that 18 months get away from you. Failure to do post licensing within 18 months means that your license is inactive until you get it done, whether or not you're affiliated with a firm or not. So that's why I say, wouldn't that be terrible to be smack dab in the middle of a transaction and your 18-month clock hit and you had to let it go because you didn't keep up with that? The commission's not going to call you and say, it's been 17 and a half months. Don't forget to do your post licensing. This time is entirely up to you guys. Everybody good on that? Piece of paper has a date on it. That date starts your 18-month clock. Keep up with that.
Hey, Julie.
Yeah.
When you complete the 3 post licensing classes, do you have like a certificate that you turn in or something?
Well, each class, the school, the education provider submits your completion. So they'll do that for you. And then once you complete all 3, your provisional status is removed. Thank you. That brings me to another point. How do you drop your provisional status? You complete your 3 post licensing classes. So once
That's
you drop
automatic, right?
Yep.
Okay.
The commission will handle that. They'll have your, because again, as you complete each one, the school will send in a certificate for you. So you'll get a letter from the commission that says your provisional status has been removed and you're just a broker.
Do they give you a new license card for that to show that you're no longer?
A new pocket card, yeah. They'll give you a new pocket card. So it'll say PB until you drop it, then it'll say B. Yep. Your license doesn't dictate what kind of broker you are. So it's just the pocket card that they'll issue you. Your license is good for your career. I got married after I got my license. And when I submitted my name change, they sent me a new 8.5 by 11. I was touched. I didn't think, because UNCG didn't send me a new diploma when I got married. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know how that would happen. So if you do have a name change or something, they will send you a new actual license and you'll get a new pocket card every year. All right, private chat, A, B, C, or D. Not 10 more seconds to weigh in. Okay, so provisional broker obtains her license on July 14, 2020. She chooses to retain her license on inactive status for the next 3 years, for her first 3 years. What the following does she have to do? What do you have to do to keep an inactive license? Show them the money. So what do you have to do? Keep an inactive license. Send in that renewal fee every year prior to June 30th. Nope, you're good. Let's try another one. A, B, C, or D, private chat. About 10 more seconds. I love it when you guys answer with question marks. Like, are you asking me? Or are you telling me what the answer is? All right, so let's see. Kelly passes her state exam. Yay. She affiliates with a BIC and begins working on a part-time basis as a provisional broker while keeping her full-time job. She receives a promotion from her other job and can now refer clients in return for a referral fee. Which of the following is true? In order for Kelly to be paid a referral fee, her license has to be what? I can see your mouths move. Her license has to be active, right? Active is the only status in which you can get paid. And as a provisional broker, how does she maintain an active license? She has to be affiliated with a BIC. Yep. So how do you get paid? You have an active license. As a provisional broker, how do you have an active license? You affiliate with a broker in charge. Questions on this one? Questions on anything we've talked about so far? We're getting ready to switch gears again. So before we move on, let me make sure we're good on everything so far.
Julie, could you go back to that one slide where you were talking about if they've been inactive for more than 2 years or less than 2 years?
So that's expired. Yep.
Yes.
And remember, I'm sending you the PowerPoints too.
Oh,
So
okay. Then we're good. I'll look
okay,
over.
you good? Okay. Yep. I was gonna say because yep, there
Yeah,
it is.
I'm for some reason I'm not grasping that, and I'm
And this is, and I think might be because it's an expired license, right? How you reinstate expired, not inactive. Okay, so 6 months, 6 months to 2 years, or 2 years, you get to start all over. Okay. By the way, if you're just joining us, I don't think anybody has, but just in case, I'm recording. So if you want to copy the recording, a copy of my PowerPoints, and a little practice quiz, and the letter about the dates, just make sure I have your email address in the chat. All right, we ready to switch gears? Move on to a different topic? Moving on. Let's talk about something called material fact. First off, the definition of a material fact is very broad. The broad definition of material facts is any fact that a buyer would consider relevant or a seller would consider relevant when making a decision to move forward with this transaction or not. Well, gee, that's kind of broad, isn't it? Could that be subjective? With that broad definition, couldn't something be a material fact to one person and not somebody else? So the Real Estate Commission has helped us out by specifying things that particularly are material facts. So taking the big definition of material fact and breaking it down into these 4 bullet points. So anything that is a fact about the property itself is considered a material fact. If the roof leaks, if the basement floods, if there's termite damage, structural issues, anything about the property itself is considered a material fact. A material fact is also anything that's related directly to the property. A proposed zoning amendment, redrawing the school board lines, widening the road, right? Anything that's related directly to the property is a material fact. A material fact is also a fact relating directly to the ability of the principal to complete the transaction. If you find out that your principal cannot complete the transaction, it's a material fact. We have to share that. Usually this revolves around money. If you find out your buyer can't get loan approval, do you have to share that with the listing agent? If
Yes.
they can't get loan approval, can they complete the transaction? No. So is that a material fact?
Yes.
Yes. If you find out your seller is going to go into bankruptcy and may possibly lose the property, is that a material fact?
Yes.
Yes. It's anything that prohibits the ability of the principal to complete the transaction. Yeah, absolutely, as long as I have your email address in the chat. Okay. The last material fact is the broad one. But the last material fact is, oh no, is a fact known to be specific importance to the principal. When it comes to this material fact, I'll share with you guys, I operate by a pretty simple philosophy. If it's important to my buyer, then it's important to me. If it's important to my seller, then it's important to me. Once my principal shares something of importance, then it becomes important to me. I had buyers a couple years ago, and she told me very early in our relationship, she told me that she has a large dining room set. She has a credenza, she has a china cabinet, and she has her dining room table with service set for 10 at all times, 4 on each side, 2 at the end. She's not going to take the leaf out. She is going to have her service set for 10 at all times. Did I now have a duty to make sure that I found her a house with a dining room big enough to make sure that it'll hold all of her dining room furniture? Yeah.
Yes.
Is it important to her? Yes. So it's important to me. And because a lot of times when we look at properties, they give us room dimensions. I could rule out us even going to a house because the dining room is too small to hold her something that's very important to her. Does that make sense to you guys? If it's important, don't you question it. If it's important to them, then it's important to you. I had a seller once that told me, if I can't make X amount, then I cannot sell my house. And every single question I asked that man, he answered with, I don't care as long as I make X amount. What do you want to list the house for? I don't care as long as I make X amount. You want to do repairs? I don't care as long as I make X amount. I'm like, dude, I'm going to need an actual answer from you at some point. The man wasn't being difficult. He genuinely didn't care as long as he made X amount. Did I have a material fact on my hand to make sure that I put a check of X amount in his hand at the end of this transaction? Absolutely. So if it's important to them, then it's important to us. Everybody good with that? So we specify things that are material facts. Guess what? We also specify things that are not considered material fact in North Carolina. Death or serious illness of a previous property occupant, somebody that lived there, maybe the death of a scenario of a murder-suicide, something that makes national news. That information is not a material fact. If you're ever asked, now let me rephrase that. When you are asked, did somebody die in this home? And I promise you, you will be asked that. Did anybody die in this home? You have choices on how you answer that. You can choose to hide behind state law and say, I don't have to answer that. That's not a material fact. If you do answer it, you have to do so honestly. And I would caution you, because what if you know the current owners? What if the current owners are your BFF and you know nobody in the current ownership died in the house? Are you willing to say that nobody ever died in the house? Do you know the owners before them and the owners before them and the owners before them? Are you guys with me? So unless you know for sure, I would caution you on how you answer. And you will be asked that. That's a pretty
Could you
common
just say
question.
you don't know?
Is that an honest answer?
Yes.
There you go. If you don't know, then I do not know the answer to that. Maybe your honest answer.
Are we obligated to find out?
No, because it's not a material fact. So I don't have a duty to discover and disclose this, right?
Got it.
Some cases are more known than others. Sometimes something may make the news. Every once in a while, we make the national news. So in some cases, it may not be a good idea to hide it, right? Because the world already knows about it. Anytime you're asked about criminal convictions, anything like that, I'm a big fan of being the source of the source. So have your buyers call the police department and find out about crime in the area. Have your buyers go to, what's it, like crimespot.com. You know, there's several websites out there that you can see what's going on. Direct them in the places to do their research. There's one exception to this rule. Does anybody know what that exception is?
Meth lab?
Say it again?
If it's a meth lab, they have to disclose that.
That is an automatic material fact, yes. But not the exception to the death or serious illness.
Suicide,
Say it,
suicide, if somebody
not
committed a
suicide. Nope, nope, not the
Is
exception.
it AIDS?
That's right. If you're ever asked, did anybody ever occupy this home that has AIDS or HIV? Your answer is always, federal fair housing prohibits me from answering that. Those with AIDS or HIV are protected under the handicap disability status of fair housing. And whether you know or not, again, back to your BFF, whether you know for a fact or not, your answer is always, federal fair housing prohibits me from answering that. Protected class. The other thing that's not a material fact is the presence of convicted sex offenders nearby. Again, be the source of the source. Have them go to the North Carolina Sex Offender Registry website and look it up. Caution your buyers on a couple things. First off, this word says what? Convicted. Are all sex offenders caught and charged yet? Unfortunately, no. So they may not be on the registry, right? Because they got to be caught and charged to be on the registry. While you may or may not have a sex offender that lives next door today, maybe one could move in tomorrow. So caution them, your buyers, on that. You have no control of who moves into the neighborhood tomorrow. Bottom line, you guys, let's know where our kids are and who they're with. Fair enough. Again, be the source of the source. You don't have to discover, you don't have to disclose. I do suggest you sending them to the website and have them do their own research and what's comfortable, what's best for them. Questions on this? Somebody mentioned the meth lab. That's an automatic material fact. So if you're standing there going, gee, is that a material fact? Yes, it is an automatic material fact. Did I hear? Yeah.
I have a question about your previous slide about the material fact. What is a material fact?
Uh-huh.
You had said something about the seller that wanted X money, regardless of what
X
you
money?
said. Now,
Uh-huh.
is that material fact just for you? The
Yes,
the
yes,
agent.
Absolutely. Because it's important to my client. Right? Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. Thank you.
but a follow-up question on that. That doesn't mean that you need to know, you need to let the selling agent know that, my seller needs 40,000
Ding,
cash
ding,
from
ding,
this
ding.
transaction.
Because that's it. That's exactly right. It's not a material fact that I share with the other side. It's a
Right.
material fact to me because my client shared a something of importance to me. That's right. So, even my buyers with the dining room, right? I wasn't calling the listing agent going, would that dining room hold a credenza and a china cabinet? And right. That was a material fact to me because they expressed that specific importance. Good questions, you guys. Thank you. All right. A, B, C, or D, private chat. Got 10 more seconds. An agent working as a seller subagent with a buyer discovers that there is a defect with the septic system in a house that the buyer has under contract to purchase. Should the agent inform their buyer customer of the defect? And the answer is yes, it's a material fact. Guys, bottom line with material facts, I always have a duty to disclose material facts. I don't care who you are. Are you my client? I owe you the disclosure of material facts. Are you my customer? I owe you the disclosure of material facts. My role doesn't matter. Am I the listing agent, the buyer's agent, a seller subagent, a dual agent, a designated agent? I always have a duty to disclose material facts. So it doesn't matter that you're communicating with a customer. Why don't y'all write that down? We always have a duty to disclose material facts. Questions on this? So what happens if you don't handle material facts correctly? There's prohibited conducts that revolve around material facts. And before we talk about the prohibited conducts, I want to take just a second, take a step back, and let's just first define some words. Let's go back to the basics for a second and first define some words. And once we define some words, then we're going to do a mashup. Okay, so let's just first define some words. A misrepresentation is when you communicate false information. You open your mouth and a lie falls out. Maybe you put out false information verbally, maybe it's through an email, a text, your listing advertising. Somehow you got false information out there. The opposite of putting false information out there is omission, which means you're not putting the information out there at all. You have kept your mouth shut. So you either lied about it or you kept your mouth shut. A willful act is one that is done on purpose. You intentionally did the act. A negligent act is one that is done unintentionally. A negligent act is one that is done by accident. But even though it was accident, it still happened. Let me ask you guys this. Tell me in a chat, W or N, which do you think the commission would consider a more serious act? A willful act or a negligent act? W or N? A willful act or a negligent act? Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think the one that can get us in the bigger trouble is the one that we do on purpose, the one that we do intentionally. Do mistakes happen? Do people make mistakes? I don't know about you guys, but I make a mistake at least once a day, right? We're all human, right? We all make mistakes. Even our commissioners are human. They make mistakes as well. So while I'm not saying a negligent act won't get you in trouble, they're going to be a lot harsher on a willful one. Is everybody good with that? Everybody understand why willful is harsher? So now that we have just defined some words, let's do a mashup. So we're going to take these words and we're going to mix them up. And the first mashup that we have is willful misrepresentation. With a willful misrepresentation, the broker has actual knowledge of a material fact and they deliberately misinformed. They know and they lie. Let's say you know, what do you want to know? Let's say you know that the roof leaks. I don't care how you learn that information, but somehow you know that the roof leaks. Interested buyer comes into your open house and asks, are there any problems with the roof? And you go, That's a willful misrepresentation. You know, and you lied. Negligent misrepresentation, you still lied, but it's unintentional. Don't answer questions unless you know the answer to them. Don't say something just for the sake of saying it. Guys, I don't know let me get back to you is a perfectly acceptable answer, as long as you plan to get back to them. If you have no intention of getting back, then just say, I don't know, and stop talking. You say, I don't know, let me get back to you. That's a perfectly acceptable answer. Y'all just don't answer for the sake of answering. With any negligent activities, the Real Estate Commission is going to apply the reasonable standards test. I don't know that you need to know that, but just kind of FYI, reasonable standards test. And the commission's going to ask, would a prudent broker in the same situation have known that or could have found that out? So you're going to be judged on how others in your market would respond, how others in your market would proceed. Understand, negligent misrepresentation, you still put false information out there. You still put false information out there for the public. So whether you do it willfully or negligently. Then we have willful omission. Broker has actual knowledge of a material fact, but fails to disclose. With willful omission, the don't ask, don't tell rule doesn't apply. Once you learn of a material fact, you have to disclose it regardless if they ask about it or not. So let's go back to our leaky roof. You know the roof leaks. I don't care how you found out, you just know. You somehow know that the roof leaks. Interested buyer shows up and starts asking questions, and they ask questions about everything but the roof. Is that an out for you not to share that material fact? Well, they didn't ask. No. We have a duty to discover and disclose. You have actual knowledge, but you kept your mouth shut. You knew and you kept your mouth shut. And then negligent, again, you do not have actual knowledge and you do not disclose. Again, they're going to apply the reasonable standards test. These are, I call these the big four. These are the big four that revolve around mishandling material facts. So the prohibited acts, the prohibited conduct around material facts, the big four. If you guys see this on your test, you're going to get a scenario and you're going to be asked which of the big four. And if I were you guys, I would first stop and ask myself, did the broker lie or did the broker keep their mouth shut? Did the broker put out false information or did they not put the information out whatsoever? Once you determine if it was a misrep or an omission, then go back and decide if it was done intentionally or unintentionally. But stop and ask yourself first, did they open their mouth and have a lie fall out or did they keep their mouth shut? That section in 707 that we're working through, just make a note, starting on page 711 over to 713. Please make a note, 711 to 713, it talks about the big four. But in addition to defining the big four, it also gives you examples of each. And that's what you're going to find on 711 to 713. I personally think that the examples are a lot more helpful than reading the definition over and over and over again. So look at those examples, 711 to 713. Questions on material facts, the big four. We're getting ready to move on again. So let's make sure we're good. Yes.
Do you think it's a good idea for the agent to go in to showing the property with a lot of material facts? So then you make sure that you cover all of them?
Do I think it's a good idea for the agent to do what? I'm sorry.
To go when they're about to show a property, to have a list of material facts to share so that you don't miss anything? Or no?
That could get, because every property is different, right? So this house may have a leaky roof and then the next house may have previous termite damage, right? So that list could be really long. So you might do better just focusing on this specific property, right? Does that make sense?
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Every single property is different. So kind of go in and with a clean slate. And guys, remember, do listing agents have to disclose material facts even if the seller says no representation? on their disclosure. Seller says no rep. Do we still have a duty to discover and disclose?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody shake your head. Yes, yes, thank you. This is a conversation. This is one of the first conversations we have with the seller when we first meet them. While you don't have to follow license law and commission rule and disclose material facts, I do. So caution the seller. I don't care how you complete the form. I still have a duty to discover and disclose material facts. And have this conversation before you learn about a material fact. Don't let the seller tell you that the roof leaks and then say, oh, I have to disclose that. Have the conversation before you learn that the roof leaks. Everybody with me? Let the seller know what they're getting into. Don't blindside them. Other questions on material facts, big four? Okay. Yeah.
Miss Julie, sorry,
Yes.
I was doubting if I should ask it or not, but
Go for it.
I did a test, learn test pass that we have, and it was asking, it said about disclosing material fact. It said what is not a material fact but must be disclosed, but it wasn't talking about any of what you just said. It said something about a death, and I thought that we didn't have to disclose, but on the question it said must be disclosed.
It's really hard for me to answer that if I can't see the question.
Yeah, and
So
it was one of the
if you have that
tests,
question, can you send that to me so I can, because remember, one word changes the meaning of everything, right? So until
Mhm.
I see all those words, until I know what all those words are. So if you have that, feel free to send it to me and I can share it with the others, you know, once you do as well. But I just,
Okay,
I can't answer that until I see all the words, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Because
okay,
these test questions get tricky, right?
yeah,
And one word changes everything.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
I just
Switching
have
gears.
one
Yeah,
question,
Please.
Judy. It's not the agent's responsibility to go and find these material facts, right? If the seller's not saying, you know, something's wrong, it's not your duty to go and, you know, find it, right? As in
We have a
death or
duty to discover and disclose. We have a
Okay.
duty to discover and disclose. So one thing with material facts that I can't discover are, and I don't spell real well. So how do you spell latent? L-A-N-E-N-T, latent? Is that right? Latent defects, hidden defects?
I think it's
I math, I don't
LATE.
spell. What is it?
LATE.
L-A-T-E-N-T,
E-N-T.
latent, L-A. Hang on. I do math, y'all. I don't spell. All right. Let's see. Let's go back in our book super quick. Anyway, a latent defect. A latent defect is a hidden defect. And if something's hidden, then I may not be able to detect it. I may not be able to discover it. Where's that word? I'll find it on break. I'll go old school and Google it and find it on break and make sure we get, because I want to make sure you guys are hearing me when I say it. So an example of a latent defect. Let's say that there's an issue behind this wall. I don't know, maybe there's mold behind this wall. Maybe there's some kind of infestation. Maybe there's electrical issues. Maybe there's something going on behind this wall. But when I look at this wall, it looks normal. It looks like nothing's wrong. You know, I can't see that there's a problem by looking at the wall. And the only way for me to discover the problem behind the wall is to whip out my crowbar and tear the wall down, right? That would be a latent defect. If I can't discover it, if I can't disclose it, then that's a latent defect or a hidden defect that I can't disclose. So while we have a duty to discover and disclose, I'm not expected to damage the property. I'm not expected to, you know, I'm not a home inspector. I'm not a general contractor. I'm not a roofer. I'm not a plumber. I'm not an electrician, right? So I can only discover and disclose what I can within my realm. But if I walk into this room and smell mold or see mold, I have a duty to ask questions. I have red flags that go up and to ask questions. Why does this room smell like mold? Why do I see mold on this wall? Does that kind of make sense? When it comes to material, you guys always have your red flags on the ready. And if you ever have a red flag go up, you got to ask questions. You got to discover what made that red flag go up. Latent. L-A-T-E-N-T, latent, is that right?
Now,
Yes,
if you get an answer that does not quite meet up to your expectation, what should you do?
It doesn't meet up to my expectations.
Yeah, like they give you an explanation and then you're like, well, I mean, that doesn't quite answer my
Ask
question.
further
So,
questions. Maybe you can ask for receipts or invoices of when the work was done.
okay.
Right. So you got to investigate a little bit further. If the seller's kind of wishy-washy, is that what you're saying? You get this hem-haw answer. Maybe you got to keep asking. Right. What if the seller lies to you and you have no way to discover otherwise? Well, the seller could be accountable for their actions to you. Although the seller doesn't have to disclose, they can't lie. Seller doesn't have to disclose anything, but even they can't lie. They could be, the buyer could sue them, and then the seller could be accountable for your actions because they lied to you. We got to ask sellers some hard, I mean, we're just meeting these guys, right? And we're going, what problems do you have with your house? What kind of liens do you have? How much money do you owe? By the way, my name is Julie, right? I mean, we're asking some very hard questions very early in our relationship with sellers. Okay. Something else we need to be very aware about is Unit 19. Unit 19 is our fair housing unit. And Unit 19 specifies protected classes. And one way that we can remember the protected classes, we can remember Fred's corn. Maybe you guys know fresh corn. The difference in Fred's and fresh is whether or not you use disability or handicap. So if you use handicap, you're going to use fresh corn. Disability, use Fred's corn. These are the protected classes as per federal and state fair housing. Familial status is about the children, not the adults, but the children. Race, equal is not a protected class. It's just a filler, so I could spell Fred's. Equal is equal opportunity for all. Disability, handicap, sex, which as of last year now does include sexual orientation and gender identity. Color, opportunity, again, opportunity for all is not a protected class. It's just a filler, so I can spell the word corn. The person's religion and the individual national origin. This is all of Unit 19. Just a quick review on this. Federal fair housing does not say, these are the protected classes. Don't you say anything bad about them. Federal fair housing says, these are the protected classes. Don't say anything at all. We can talk about the property all day long. We cannot talk about the people that are protected. And that's what the protected classes mean. The big picture of fair housing says everybody, regardless of their protected class, should have the right to live wherever they want to, as long as it's in their financial means. The other takeaway from fair housing I always get, what you do for one, you do for all. And that way nobody can come in and say that you treated them differently than somebody else. What you do for one, you do for all. Treat everybody the same and everybody equally. So Unit 19 is our fair housing. National Association of Realtors has actually deemed April Fair Housing Month. So you guys are missing, there's a lot of good training and materials coming out of NAR this month. You guys are missing that because you're not members of NAR yet, but next April, you'll get some good refreshers, some good opportunities to make sure that you're current on the laws and make sure that you're aware. You need to be aware of how you're conducting your day-to-day business. Okay. All right. Let's take our break. I got 10:57, so we'll come back at 11:08, just in case that clock switches. When we come back, our last hour before math, we're going to do some general brokerage provisions. So we're going to talk about some general brokerage provisions at 11:08. All right. I found that word. Sorry, I struggled over it so much. A latent defect is a hidden defect. I can't disclose what I don't know, right? So as long as it's latent and I cannot discover it, then I can't disclose as a material fact. I can only disclose what I can or reasonably should know. So again, that word, and I'll put it in the chat too, in case not all back yet. Okay. All right, let's switch gears again just a bit. Remember, we're going to do one more hour of state specific stuff. And then after we come back from our last break, we're going to devote the last hour to some math. So maybe I can offer some tips and tricks to help you with the math. So let's just talk about some general brokerage provisions. What that means is there's just rules that all brokers have to follow per the real estate commission license law and commission rule. And one provision that they have for us is if you change your name or your address, if you move your personal or your business, if you change your name, if you get married and change your name, if you get divorced and change your name. Can anybody tell me how many days you have to respond, how many days you have to notify the real estate commission within that change? How many days? I see hands. I see it coming in the chat. You guys are so good. 10 days within the change to notify the commission. Again, once you get your license, you're going to have a log on to the commission's website. And there's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can do in your log on. And one of them is changing your name and address. So if you move, if you get married, if you change your name, if you change your address. In other words, you got to keep the real estate commission notified of who you are. Does that make sense? Everybody good with that? Who you are and where you are. You guys know that to get your license, to apply for your license, you have to do a criminal background check. Once you get your license, though, you're not off the hook. When you get your license, what happens if you get a criminal conviction? How many days, once you're licensed, do you have to report to the real estate commission of any criminal convictions? How many days? You get a little bit more time on this one. Maybe I'll drop that as a hint. You get a little bit more time on this one. And I'm seeing a couple of you. I like it. A couple of you. You have 60 days. Once you're licensed, if you get yourself in trouble, once you're licensed, you have 60 days to report the conviction. I want you all to stop for 1 second. And I want you to please note that that word says conviction. Does that word say charged with a felony or a misdemeanor? If you're charged, you don't have to report it until you're convicted of it. Everybody with me? You don't have to report a charge. You do have to report it once you're convicted. The other piece of this rule that this applies to, does anybody have another professional license? May it be a real estate license in another state, a CNA license, a CPA license. If you have another professional license and you get yourself in trouble with that licensing board, you have to report it to the real estate commission within 60 days. What are they going to do to you? I don't know. They're going to review it case by case. Bottom line, it's going to come down to how badly did you harm the public? You may or may not get in trouble if you report it. You will get in trouble if you don't. Everybody with me? I don't know what kind of house you grew up in, but in my house, it was much better if I did something wrong to tell mama than let mama find out on her own. Did anybody grow up in a similar house to mine? When it comes to this rule, think of the real estate commission as mama. You may or may not get in trouble if you tell them. You will if you don't. To have everybody, we got to report it 60 days. Delivery of instruments. How many, and we'll talk about what an instrument, we'll talk about what an instrument is in just a second. How many days do we have to deliver these instruments? And I'm seeing hands coming up. I'm seeing them come in chat. I think I'm liking what I'm seeing, so that's good. We have 3 days to deliver an instrument. So let's first talk about what the heck an instrument is. An instrument is just any document that relates to this transaction. It starts with our agency agreements. Eventually, hopefully, we'll get it under contract. And then, fingers crossed, we may make it to closing. Every step of the process, whenever we have a client sign or have something related to this transaction, we have to stop and deliver that instrument within 3 days. Guys, it's as easy as sending an email with a PDF attachment and saying, here is our signed agency agreement. I look forward to working with you. Have a nice day. You attach the PDF, you hit send. Our job is to deliver it. What they do with it when they get it, not on me. They're going to print it out and file it, or they're going to delete it. Not on me. My job is to do what? Deliver it. I got to put it in their hands. There is a very common misconception out there in the broker community. Don't fall into this trap. Some agents think, I'll just wait till the end of the transaction and send them everything all at once. What's the commission rule say? We have 3 days to deliver it. So don't wait until the end. You're delivering as you go. I want you guys to write something down. This might be one of the more important things that you guys get from this class for real life, not necessarily for your test, but for real life. Y'all ready to write this down? Write this down. Document everything. What are you going to document? Everything. So if you have a sent email with an instrument attached, are you going to document that sent email with the date and the time that you sent it? Yes. Because you document what? Everything.
Everything.
Everything. Okay. So you send that email, you go into your sent folder and you flag it to that transaction file that you have, 123 Main Street, whatever you want to call it, Bob, whatever you want to call it. You save it to that transaction. Fair enough? There is some more free advice for the day. See how much more I can slip in before it's over. All right, so we're sending everything within 3 days. Oh, good, thank you. And retention of records. Everything that I document, how long do I have to keep it? How long do I have to keep records? Seeing it again, fingers in chats. We have 3 years. We have to keep everything for at least 3 years. So what are we keeping? Everything. How long do I keep it? For at least 3 years. At least meaning 3 is the minimum. Can you keep it longer than 3? Sure. Thanks to the e-cloud, thanks to the e-world that we're in, it's a lot easier to keep stuff today than it was back in the day when we had the file cabinet room. Do you know what the file cabinet room was? It was a room full of file cabinets. Now we just keep everything on the cloud and it's a whole lot easier. We keep everything for 3 years. We keep everything from 3 years from the successful or the unsuccessful conclusion of the transaction. If it closes, we keep it for 3 years. If it doesn't close, guess what? We keep it for 3 years. Document everything, and your 3-year clock starts when that transaction is over. We have some rules with advertising. I cannot perform a single service for an owner. May that be a seller or a landlord in a property management situation. I cannot perform a single service for the owner without having a signed and written agency agreement. Thus, I cannot advertise their home for sale or for rent without having their owner's consent. How do I have their consent? Because I have a signed written agency agreement. May it be a listing agreement or a property management agreement. I have permission to advertise their home in that agreement. Social media does apply to advertising. Sometimes we think, well, so it's Facebook, it's different. Rules for advertising are the same, whether or not you're putting on Facebook or you're putting in the real estate print book. What was that? Real estate for sale or something. I don't remember now what it's called. However you're advertising, it applies. And one big thing with ads, we can't have a blind ad. A blind ad doesn't mention the name of the firm. Whose listing is it? Is it yours?
The firms.
It's the firm's. So in order for you to properly advertise the firm's listing, you have to have the firm's name. And your email address isn't sufficient. Let's say, for example, pick a company. Let's say you're working for Allen Tate and your email is julie@allentate.com or whatever your name is at allentate.com. That email address isn't a sufficient way to advertise the firm. Somewhere in that ad, you have to specify that it's with Allen Tate. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you have a blind ad. We mentioned our seller disclosures earlier. Particularly, we got the residential property and owners. I can't, that's so much to say. Residential property and owners association disclosure statement. Everybody good if I call it the RPODs going forward? That's just so much easier to say, RPODs. We also have the mineral and oil and gas mandatory disclosure statement, much easier for me to call it the MOG. One thing I like about this industry is if we can make an acronym out of it, by golly, we're going to. So the RPODs and the MOG are our seller disclosures. Seller disclosures, who completes these? Seller. Can I complete it for them? Absolutely not. Seller disclosures. Can I help them? Can I assist them? Absolutely. Can I get them the form, provide them the form? Of course I can. I cannot sit down and do it for them. That's their job. Sellers aren't licensed, unless they are. Unlicensed sellers don't have to follow license law and commission rule, which means unlicensed sellers don't have to disclose anything, do they? These forms are mandatory forms with optional disclosures. Let me say that again. Mandatory form, optional disclosure, which means the seller has to complete it and provide it, but they have the option to say no representation. They have to provide it, but they do not have to disclose. Regardless of how they complete this form, I always have a duty to discover and disclose material facts. So if the roof leaks and the seller says no representation, I still have to disclose it. If the roof leaks and the seller says no, the roof doesn't leak, I got to get the seller to tell the truth. They still can't lie. Even though they don't have to disclose, nobody ever has a free ticket to lie. We learned that a long time ago, didn't we? In our wee years, lying is not good. And that still applies today. Please, thank you, don't lie, all that stuff. There's another seller disclosure, lead-based paint. Lead-based paint applies to anything built prior to what year? Residential property built prior to what year?
78.
1978. So anything built prior to 1978, seller discloses if they know of lead in the home. Buyer acknowledges receipt. Questions? All right, let's switch gears again. Just keep jumping around all over the place. Let's talk about your working with real estate agent disclosure. The working with real estate agent disclosure is just that, a disclosure. The working with real estate agents does not create agency. It's not a contract. All you're doing with the working with real estate agent disclosure is disclosing your agency status in this transaction. Maybe you're working with the seller, maybe you're working with the buyer. You're not creating agency. I always think of the working with real estate agent disclosure as the consumer's Miranda rights. We've seen on TV what the Miranda rights say. Anything you say can be held against you. So before the consumer shares too much information, we need to stop them from talking in some cases and make sure that they understand what you tell me, you might as well be talking directly to my principal. So if the potential buyer shares something with me, I have a duty to take that to my seller. Don't they deserve to know that? Don't they deserve to know that what they share with me, I have a duty to take to my client? Absolutely. The biggest thing that the working with real estate agent disclosure does is it tells the consumer, I don't owe you confidentiality until you decide to hire me. If you never hire me, I don't owe you confidentiality. Y'all, people talk. It blows my mind. And people love to talk about real estate. You're going to learn that once you start getting out and working and people, oh, what's the market like? People love to talk about real estate. And people, man, they'll walk into your open house. Hey, I'm a super motivated buyer and I got to buy something in 3 months. And this is my price point, my pre-approved. No. People love to talk. We have always got to be on alert when people are talking, when we're acting in the capacity of an agent. So if we're putting ourselves out there, maybe we're doing an open house, maybe you're wearing your name badge while you're grocery shopping. If you're wearing your name badge while you're grocery shopping, why are you wearing your name badge? Because you want somebody to come up to you and start talking about real estate, right? So if you're looking at the serial and they see that you're working with a real estate company and they come up, don't you need to be on alert for first substantial contact in aisle 4? Don't you need to be paying attention for what they're going to say? So anytime you're putting yourself out there, letting the world know you're an agent, you need to be on alert because people talk. We need to be on alert for what's referred to as first substantial contact. First substantial contact is that period of time when the conversation switches gears from the property to the person. We can talk about the property all day long, but once the person starts sharing their PTM, price, term, or motive, price, term, or motive. How much are they willing to pay? How much under asking price is the seller willing to sell? What are their terms? When do they have to buy? When do they have to sell? What are their motives? Why do they have to buy? Why do they have to sell? Generally, when that conversation switches gears from the property to information about the person that could affect them in this transaction. And there may be cases that we actually have to say, stop, please stop talking. I'm not doing it to be rude. It would be rude if I let them keep talking. Yes? Again, my house growing up, Mama always says, it's rude to interrupt people. Y'all raised that way? It's rude to interrupt. If somebody's talking, you let them finish talking. Y'all never repeat this, but in this case, Mama's wrong. It is rude. Y'all don't tell my mama I said that. In this case, it is rude to let them keep talking and not interrupt them. Everybody with me? Because I have a duty to let them know how they could be hurting themselves by keep talking. So we're always on alert. If you think you're in a situation where first substantial contact is going to happen, go ahead and do your working with real estate agent disclosure up front. Examples of that, you're meeting a buyer at the office this afternoon for a buyer consultation. You're going to sit down with an hour and talk to the buyer about the process of buying a house. Is it safe to say you're going to hit first substantial contact in this hour? Yeah. So as soon as y'all sit down, say, let me start doing my work with real estate agent. What if you're going on a listing appointment tomorrow? It's a competitive listing appointment. Maybe you'll get the listing, maybe you won't. But is it safe to say at some point in that listing appointment, you're going to hit first substantial contact? Yeah. So as soon as you show up at the seller's house, the seller's proud, they want to give you the grand tour. Slow them down. Before you show me around, let's sit down at your kitchen table and have a conversation. Here's our working with real estate. You guys with me? If you know first substantial contact can happen, go ahead and do it. If you're doing the open house on Sunday, maybe a buyer comes in and out, never says a word to you. Maybe a buyer walks in the door and says, I'm pre-approved for X amount. Stop talking. Do your working with real estate agent. We always have to be on alert for this. Working with real estate agent disclosure applies to sales transaction. This is probably a problem topic all day long. Does that say lease transactions? Does that say all real estate transactions? What does that say?
Sales.
Sales. And can we all be clear? Is commercial sales a sales transaction?
Yes.
Yeah.
Commercial sales?
Yes.
Yeah. So sales is sales, whether it's residential or commercial. If it's sales, we have to do our working with real estate agent disclosure at first substantial contact. There's your name and number again. I think for the most part, let's just say for the most part, first substantial contact happens face to face. Like I said, we got a buyer consultation scheduled, or maybe I'm going to a listing appointment. Maybe I'm doing an open house. I think for the most part, first substantial contact happens face to face. But we also need to be on alert if first substantial contact happens via the phone or online. If first substantial contact happens and we're not face to face, how many days do we have to get the disclosure to the consumer? 3. Look at you guys go. You're so good. If they call, we hit first substantial. Whoa, please stop talking. I'm still going to discuss it with them, right? Don't just let them talk because you have this 3-day rule. I'm still going to discuss it with them. But this rule says I have 3 days to send them the form. So we still have a conversation. We still explain it to them. We still warn them. Anything you say can be held against you. But now I have 3 days to put the form in their inbox. Can I make anybody do anything? Unfortunately, no. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I can't make you do anything. What if a consumer refuses to sign it? Can I force them? Can I put the pen in their hand and make them sign it? No. If they refuse to sign, then I just write, refuse to sign. It acknowledges that I still went over it with them. I tried. I had a lady look at me once. She was interested in one of my listings. And I felt like she had a lot of questions on the phone about the property. And I met her at the house, and I feared that this conversation could switch gears from the property to the person. So we were still standing in the driveway. We just met each other for the first time. I said, let me just go ahead. And I did my working with real estate agent. And that woman looked me dead in the eye, and she said, I just met you. I'm not signing anything that you gave me. Fair enough. I'm a shady looking character. I get that. Fair enough. I wrote, refuse to sign. Did I say, all right, then have a nice day, get in my car and leave? No, I wrote, refuse to sign. We walked in. I showed her the property. I still had the conversation with her, caution about what you say to me. You guys with me? But I couldn't make her sign it. Questions on our working with real estate agent disclosure?
I have a
Oh,
general
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So is it okay as an agent to say, or to start a conversation for the first time, like, I need to let you know who I'm working for. And this is, we have to review this,
Yep.
for commission rule.
Yep. It's never too early to do your working with real estate agent. There is a point in time where it's too late. And what's too late is once you start learning first substantial contact. So with that being said, buyers, be careful with buyers because they're like these timid, scared little creatures. So if you come to my open house on Sunday and I say, hey, welcome, I need you to sign this disclosure, you're probably going to turn around and run away, right? Because buyers can come in your open house all day without ever hitting first substantial contact. So I just say that just to be cautious. You don't want to scare anybody off. But while I'm doing that open house, I need to be on alert because the buyer may walk in, look around and say, thanks so much, have a nice day and leave, right? Another buyer may come in and say, oh, wow, this is really nice. And we got to buy something really fast. And I need to move within 2 months. Stop talking. Does that make sense? It's never too early, but there is a time that it's too late. But with that being said, don't scare them off. A question came in on the brochure. Do you write their name even if they refuse to sign? Yeah, if you know it. But if they come to your open house, you may not know their name, right? So that lady that I met at my listing, yeah, I wrote her, Barbara refused to sign, whatever her name was. But if they come in your open house, you may or may not know their name. So you may just have to say, guy that came into my open house on Sunday refused to sign, right? I would put some kind of, just to maybe help me remember if nothing else. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what if in the question they give you like all 4 answers? What could it be the right answer?
Now we're looking for the best one, aren't we? And we're getting ready to see one of those questions in just a second. So, or possibly in a second, but yeah, it could be the best. Everybody's going to come up to you in the grocery store and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying or selling. Guess what, y'all? Everybody's thinking about buying or selling. I wouldn't consider that for substantial contact. If they come up to you in the grocery store and say, I have to buy within 3 months, okay, that's a different scenario. Yes, that's a different story. I'm thinking about versus I must. You guys see? So sometimes it's kind of your context clues. Agency disclosure does not create agency. I'm going to say that again. Working with real estate agent disclosure does not create agency. It's a disclosure. What creates agency are agency agreements. Disclosure does not create agency. Another problem topic. Disclosure does not create agency. Agency agreements create agency. Eventually, all of our agency agreements have to be in writing and signed by all parties. Your agency relationship is between the client and the firm. The firm allows you to sign their agency agreement on their behalf. So the seller and or buyer or the owner in a property management situation sign the agency agreement. The agent signs the agency agreement on behalf of the firm. The Real Estate Commission allows us to work with buyers and tenants at first under an oral agency agreement. Again, buyers are these scared, timid little creatures. And if you meet a buyer for the first time and say, before I can ask you anything, we need to enter into an agency relationship and you have to hire me and we're going to be exclusive. The buyer's going to turn around and run away because they're afraid. So because it takes us a little bit more time to form relationships with buyers and tenants, the Real Estate Commission allows us to work at first with a buyer in an oral buyer agency agreement. An oral buyer's agency agreement is an agency agreement. You guys talked about an express agreement versus an implied agreement. Express agreements say that the terms are clearly stated. Express agreements can be in writing or oral. Versus an implied agreement where I just start acting like your agent. We don't have a conversation. I just start acting like I'm your agent. Implied isn't allowed. We have to have an express agreement that can be in writing and oral or oral. If you're working with a buyer in an oral buyer agency agreement, you guys please tell me in the chat, what do I owe that buyer? In an oral buyer agency agreement, what do I owe that buyer? Oral buyer agency agreement. And I owe that buyer what? oral buyer agency agreement oral buyer agency agreement. I owe that buyer OCAR. Let me say this one more time. An oral buyer agency agreement is an agency agreement. And when we enter into an agency agreement, I owe you OCAR. The fact that it's oral, it's an express agreement. So am I still discussing the terms? Am I still talking about dual agency? Are we still having conversations about what it means to be in an agency agreement? Yes, we just don't have it in writing yet. Everybody with me? I owe that buyer OCAR because they're my client. What do you think they owe me in an oral buyer agency agreement?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. I can't bind them. I can't commit them until we're in writing.
So they can walk away at any point?
Exactly. Oral agency agreements are non-exclusive. Okay, you don't have exclusivity. If you're dating somebody exclusively, how many people should you be dating?
One.
Just one. Thank you. Men sometimes have a different answer for that question than women. So thank you, gentlemen, for, for that. If you're dating somebody exclusively, you should only be dating one person. And when it comes to agency relationships, exclusivity is a one-way street. If it's exclusive, the buyer can only date how many firms? How many firms can the buyer date? Just one. The firm can date as many buyers as they want to, right? But the buyer can only date one firm. You cannot have an oral exclusive relationship. You can't have exclusivity in an oral relationship. If you demand exclusivity, then you got to put it in writing. Look for that key word when you're doing test questions, practice questions. If it tells you that an agency relationship with a buyer is exclusive, is it in writing or is it oral? If it's exclusive, then it has to be
in writing.
Writing. Thank you. Also, an oral buyer agency, you can't specify a time period. So an oral buyer agency, you can't say, we're going to work together for 2 months. If you want to put a time period on it or a time limit, you got to get it in writing. The latest that we have to put our oral buyer agency in writing is when we're ready to present an offer on their behalf. I cannot present an offer on somebody's behalf in an oral agreement. We got to put it in writing. And guys, that's for you. They don't owe me commission until we have this agreement in writing. So why would you present an offer on somebody's behalf if you have no commitment that they're going to pay you, that they have no commitment for compensation? You guys with me? So to secure your money, to secure your compensation, we have to put that oral buyer agency in writing before we're ready to present the offer on their behalf. When I say present the offer, this could be the buyer's agent contacting the listing agent and saying, I have an offer. This could be the buyer's agent contacting the for sale by owner. You're presenting an offer on their behalf, on somebody else's behalf. Question came in, can you have a seller have an oral agreement? No. And I'm going to go back for 1 second. Maybe. No, I talked about it somewhere else. The agency agreements with the owner, may it be the seller or an owner in a property management, have to be in writing from the onset. I cannot perform a single service for the owner until we have our agency agreement in writing. It's only buyer tenant that allows us to be oral. All of our agency agreements are eventually in writing. Everybody good with that? All of them eventually are in writing. Some start out that way. Some have the opportunity to become that later. All of our written buyer agency agreements, all of our written or not buyer agency, I'm sorry, all of our written agency agreements must. Y'all know what that word must means? Is there wiggle room to the word must? All of our written agency agreements must be for a definite period of time. We got to put an expiration date on these things. And when they're over, they're over. If we're in an agency agreement until, what's today? April 23rd at 11:59 p.m. tonight, we're done. Can we agree to extend it? Sure we can. Sure we can. Do we have to? No, we might be ready to part ways with each other, but we have to have a definite expiration date. And when they're over, they're over. The property management agreement may allow for an automatic renewal. Property management agreement may allow for an automatic renewal. But with listing and buying, sellers and buyers, when agency's over, it's over unless we agree to extend it. There's that license number we need. Again, 6-digit number when you get your license. Go ahead and memorize it. And then our written agency agreements also have our non-discrimination clause saying that we're not going to discriminate against the protected classes. Question came in. Does the agent let the client know how long their agreement is with? Absolutely. It's a negotiable field. It's not a pre-printed field. So it's a blank field that we put a date in. Your firm may have a policy on how long they want their agency agreements. It might be a case by case. In this market, are you guys familiar what's going on, aware of what's going on in this market? Houses are flying off the shelf. We can't keep them long enough. Agency agreements may not be that long right now. That pendulum is going to swing back one day and we will be in a buyer's market again. And we may need more time because we need more than 12 hours for a buyer to make an offer, right? So how long our agency agreements are may be up to firm policy. It may also be up to the current market. One thing, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you what tomorrow's going to look like. I know real estate is a market though, and markets fluctuate. Yes, there are highs and there are lows. In real estate, we go in and out of sellers markets and buyers markets. So this market we're in right now is temporary. How long is it going to last? I have no idea. But one day we'll be back. I think of real estate as a big pendulum. We just go sellers, buyers, sellers, buyers. Right now we're like up here. One day we'll come back down and we will be in a buyer's market again. So let's see. So how does the agent let the client know? That should be a conversation we have when we complete our listing agreement. Again, it's a fill in the blank field. So hopefully, if nothing else, we're encouraging our consumers to read before they sign. Do y'all know how many people read before that don't read before they sign? It blows my mind. So it's a negotiable field. And again, it could be up to the firm's policy how that is presented. So why do I have a picture of an airplane here? Oh yeah, what does that mean? So I get the story from my mentor, and when she teaches agency, particularly our client versus our customer, if she knows, I borrow this from her, and she knows I use it. When we talk about the client versus the customer, we've already decided I owe my client old car. Right? Those that hire me, maybe in writing or verbally, I owe them old car. If you're not my client, you're my customer. So if you don't hire me, I owe you honesty, fairness, and the disclosure material facts. The client gets old car. The customer gets honesty, fairness, and the disclosure material facts. When you're trying to decide what does your client get, what does your customer get, think of an airplane and let's pretend that you are the pilot of this plane. Okay, you're flying this plane. You're going to put your clients in first class. You're going to put your customers back in coach. Is there a difference between first class and coach? So I hear. I hear it's really nice in first class. I hear in first class you get like a warm meal, maybe some champagne, right? What do we get back in coach? I get unsalted pretzels and a lukewarm Coca-Cola. Are we all still on the same plane? Are we all still getting from point A to point B at the same time, hopefully? The difference is what? The difference is the level of service that you receive in between. Your clients get old car in first class. Your customers get coach. I'm sorry, get honesty, fairness, discover material facts back in coach. We have a duty to get this plane. That's our job, y'all, is to fly the plane from here to here and safely land everybody here. But how we treat people in between depends if they hire us or not. You got two choices. You either hire me or you don't. Questions, comments on that? All right. Who was it? Where'd he go? There he is. Antonio, you ready? All right. Tell me in the chat, A, B, C, or D. You got 10 more seconds to weigh in. Okay. First essential contact is best illustrated by which of the following situations? First off, can we all agree that any of these could eventually lead to first substantial contact? Which tells you what? First substantial contact can happen at any time. Always be on alert for first substantial contact. This is why we're looking for the best one. Which one is closest to first substantial contact? The one that the client says that they have to relocate. We're not talking about the property. We're not talking about the neighborhood. Everybody says they want to buy or sell. The one that we're looking for here, the best one, is the one that is required to relocate in the next 6 months. Do they have motivation? Do they have, I mean, everybody has motivation to sell. I guess let's say that. But when they share that motivation with you, that's when we've hit first substantial contact. Okay. So there's another one. A, B, C, or D. About 10 more seconds to weigh in. So buyer agrees to be exclusively represented by a broker affiliated with XYZ. What's the key word there?
Exclusively.
Exclusively. Can you be exclusive in an oral agreement?
No,
So when you see that word exclusive, that should mean a whole lot to you.
it's in
You guys
writing.
with me? It's in writing. That's right. So a buyer agrees to be exclusively represented, which means, where'd my clicker go? Clicker. There it is. Exclusive buyer agency agreement must be in writing once the buyer has agreed to work only with the broker at XYZ. You cannot demand exclusivity in a oral agreement. In an oral agreement, the buyer is free to date as many firms as they want to. And remember, exclusivity is just a one-way street. The firm can play the field, right? Y'all think about it. Some of these firms have 400, 500, 600 agents. Could they make money if they only had one buyer at a time? Could they make money if they only had one listing at a time? So exclusivity is a one-way street. Everybody good with that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I thought when you write when you get into an agreement with the client, it has to be with the firm.
It is. So it's the broker affiliated with XYZ Realty. Yep.
I thought the broker was the sub agent of the buyer.
Well, the buyer's agent is the one that's been allowed, the firm allows to work with the buyer. So the firm allows one agent to work with the buyer. We'll call them the buyer's agent. Everybody else by default is a sub-agent. They're an agent of the firm. But there's one person that the firm allows to work with their buyer or their seller.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay. Let's do one more. A, B, C, or D. You got 10 more seconds. So a broker with ABC Realty meets a buyer and reviews the working with real estate agent disclosure. The buyer listens but refuses to sign. Which of the following is true? Well, we can proceed. We can keep going. Just because they don't sign doesn't mean that we can't continue. Why? Because working with real estate agent disclosure doesn't create agency. I'm just disclosing my agency status. So hopefully we can proceed. I build their trust. Can I try to get them to sign again later?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe one. I had an agent call me the other day from my firm, call me the other day. She said, Julie, this is a new one. I said, oh, good. The agent was, I'm sorry, the buyer was willing to sign buyer agency. They did not want to sign working with real estate agent disclosure. They had no problem signing an agency agreement. Sure, where do I sign? They refused to sign the disclosure. And I said, you may want to revisit how you present that. Because if you presented that properly, they would know that they're not entering into a contract with disclosure. You guys with me? We're not creating agency with the disclosure. They had no problem signing the agency agreement to create agency, but they did. So exactly. Sometimes it comes back to us. And I'm telling you guys, I'm telling you, the first couple of times you do your working with real estate agent disclosure, it's going to be bumpy and awkward. And it's going to sound something like commission rule, disclosure, just sign here, right? It's going to be uncomfortable the first couple of times you do it. But I promise you, the more you do, get your elevator spiel, your elevator pitch down. And the more you do it, the more naturally it's going to flow and the better it's going to go. The first time, not good. It will only get better from there. So practice, practice, practice with that. Okay. Units 7 and 8 in your textbook are your agency agreement, your agency relationship. I hope I don't have to tell you that agency is a heavily tested topic, because agency is really important, right? If you don't know how to form the relationships with the consumer, are you doing what's in the best interest of the real estate commission's public? No. We are the ones that are tasked with this. So make sure 7 and 8. And in addition, 707 in the back of your book, look at starting on page 716. Or make a note to look at page 716. And it talks about agency agreement and disclosures starting on page 716 as well. So agency agreements, agency disclosure, 7 and 8. And again, on page 716, very important. Questions? Concerns?
What pages again?
716. So let's take our last break. We come back, we're going to devote the last 50 minutes or so, or 49 minutes we're at now, to some math. So we're going to do a little math review. Again, I didn't get through everything in my PowerPoint, but I'll send it to you guys after this afternoon, so you'll have everything. So I want to do the last minutes. Let's see, it's 12:01 now. So let's come back at 12:12, and then we'll do the last 48 minutes or so on math. Yes.
I just had a quick question before we
Sure.
leave for the break.
Sure.
So for the disclosure, can you please give an example, like how you would do it, without, being awkward, or, like how would you present it?
And again, it depends on the situation, but, basically I just say, if I may interrupt you for a second before you continue, you need to know where I stand in this transaction. You have a right to know where I stand in this transaction. I represent fill in the blank. Is it the seller? Is it the buyer? And you have a right to know that whatever you tell me is just like communicating directly with them. So be cautious about what you share with me. And I also make sure that they understand they have a right to know that I do not owe them confidentiality until they decide to hire me. The forms say all that. The disclosure says that. So my thinking is, why recreate the wheel? You already have the information in the disclosure. Now, I don't suggest sitting down reading to them. Nobody likes being read to. But take the information from the form and use that in your conversation. The form says, I don't know you confidentiality. The form says this is not a contract. The form says all that. So take that and put it in your own words. Does that make sense? And kind of get that spiel. Make flashcards. I hate role playing. I feel so dumb when I role play, but you know what? It works because it helps. It's memory muscle, right? Once you say it enough times, then it just becomes reflective and you just go. So use the forms, use the information you've been given, but make sure they understand communicating with me is the same as communicating with my principal, and be careful about what you tell me because I don't know you confidentiality.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. How's everybody doing? It's a nice day out. We ready to go outside and play? I am. I get to play this afternoon with my weed whacker and play some weed killer, and you know, I enjoy weed whacking. It's a lot of fun. So when I say play, I mean it's good time. So I'm loving this time of year. So I'm going to spend the rest of our time together, about 45 minutes or so, just going over some math. Before I start with math, let me say something very important about math. So please hear what I'm about to say. For your exam, both your end of class exam and your state exam, the math alone can't fail you. What that means is you don't have enough math questions that if you get them all wrong, you're going to fail the exam. There's not enough math to fail you. If math is your thing, use some of the math to get you some couple extra points. If math isn't your thing, maybe you don't focus so much on math. You guys with me? Because the math alone can't fail you. But if you can get some of the math, then it can help you. If you get all the math, then you're doing all right. But if math isn't your thing, sometimes when I say math, I swear some of you hear a 4-letter word that I shouldn't be saying out loud in public, right? And if that's how you feel about math, then, you know, that's okay. Never, ever, ever leave a question blank. So if you get to math and you don't know, just put down B, guess C, whatever your favorite letter is. You guys with me? So don't let the math dictate all your study time while you're getting ready for your exams. Okay. But with that being said, you might be able to use it to your advantage for a couple questions. The other thing I have to say about, I like math. I'm that person. The other thing I have to say about math, there's almost always more than one way to solve it. Did anybody else back in high school lose points on your math test because you didn't do it the way the teacher did? You got the right answer, but you didn't take the same steps. Is that the most aggravating thing in the whole wide world to you? It was to me. Guess what? We're past that. All you have to do is show me A, B, C, or D. We don't need to see your work. I don't care how you get there. Just get there. Even if you guess right, you're going to get it right. Okay. All you have to do is show me A, B, C, or D. You don't need to show your work. And if you have a different way to get there from what we're getting ready to talk about, by all means, I don't care how you get there. Just get there. Okay. So let me introduce you to my favorite math tool. And my favorite math tool is something called the T-bar. It doesn't take you long. You don't have to spend much time with me to know what a fan of the T-bar I am. You guys want to take just a second and jot all this down, and then we'll talk about it. Nope. Good. The T-bar works when I have 3 variables. If I have more than 3 variables, the T-bar doesn't work. But if I have 3 variables, and we're going to look at some examples in just a second. If I have 3 variables, I can make the T-bar work. I'm just making this number up, but I'm guesstimating about 80% of your math can be solved using the T-bar. Which means the other 20%, there are formulas that you just have to know. Okay, so most of the time we can use a T-bar. When you're reading a word problem, and you see the word rate or percent, for the most part, we can use a T-bar. So let's talk about what all these mean. The T-bar consists of 3 parts. There's the part, the whole, and the rate or the percent. This back 4th line right here means divide. This up down line means multiply. So depending on what your X is your unknown variable. In other words, what are you solving for? If the question asks you for the percent, then you take the part and you divide it by the whole. If the question asks you for the whole, you take the part and divide it by the percent. If it asks you for the part, you take the whole times the percent. The T-bar gives me 3 different formulas. I can solve for part, I can solve for whole, or I can solve for percent or rate. 100% of the time, the percent or rate goes in the bottom right. I am telling you, Julie says the percent or rate always goes in the bottom right. That should be the no-brainer for you guys. When you see rate or percent, bottom right. The next question comes in, well, what's the part and what's the whole? For the most part, the part is gonna be smaller than the whole. For the most part, the part is gonna be smaller than the whole. So let's say, for example, you have a word problem. Let's talk about commission. Y'all wanna talk about money? Let's talk about commission. So let's say you have a problem and it tells you that the firm is paid 3% and the commission is $3,000. And then it asks you for the sales price. The unknown variable is the X. The unknown variable is the sales price. Julie says the percent always goes where? Bottom right. So now we're left with commission and sales price. Which one's smaller? Is commission going to be less than sales price? Unfortunately for us, yes. We're not going to get paid more than what the house sells for, right? So now when I'm trying to solve this problem, when I read a word problem and I see the rate or percent, I almost always, without thinking, throw myself down a T-bar. Julie says the rate or the percent always goes in the bottom right. And now I'm left with commission and sales price. Does commission go on top or does commission go on the bottom right? It's going to go on top because it's smaller than the sales price, which tells me that I'm going to solve for my X, which is my sales price. The back 4th line means what?
Divide.
The back 4th line, yep, means divide. So on your calculator, you take 3,000 and divide it by 3%, which means we get a sales price of $100,000. When in doubt, I'm such a fan of the T-bar. When in doubt, I say it's Julie proof. Like I can't even mess this up. Try as I might, I cannot mess this up. Let's say you're in the heat of the test and you're stressed out, you're anxious. You got a lot going on. Oh, what number goes on top? Oh, what number goes on bottom? Y'all, stop staring at a blank piece of paper and waiting on numbers to like magically form and do something. Guess what? They don't do that. With math, you got to pick up the calculator. You got to play around with the numbers and make something happen. If you're in the stress of the test and you read this same problem, the rate or the percent always goes on the bottom right. Julie told us that. Rate or percent always goes there. That's the no-brainer. And let's say you're in the stress of the test and you don't remember, does the 3,000 go on top or does the 3,000 go on bottom? Oh, I don't remember. Take 4 seconds and switch those numbers and work it both ways. If you can't remember what goes on top, what goes on bottom, do it both ways and see what you get. Now I'm solving for X The up down line means multiply, right? So now when I take 3,000 times 3%, I get a sales price of $90. Does it make sense for me to sell your house for $90? And when I do sell your house for $90, me get paid $3,000? Does that, we'd like it to be that way, but does that make sense? So if you're not sure which number goes on top, which number goes on bottom, you can take 3 seconds, you can flip those numbers and see which answer makes the most sense. This can save you time on your test instead of staring at that problem going, what do I do with these numbers? I've been doing math tutoring for a long time. I'm coming up on like 15 years on math tutoring. And hands down, the number one question I get with math tutoring is, when do I divide and when do I multiply? And my highly educated response to you is, do it both ways. Multiply and divide, see what you get, decide which answer makes the most sense, and move on. Remember, your exams are timed. So the longer you stand staring at a piece of paper, or staring at that math question, the time is ticking away. So do something. Pick the calculator up. If you're not sure about multiplying, try divide and see what you get, and vice versa.
Good question, Julie.
So I'm a fan of the T-bar. Where does the rate of percent go? Bottom right. You can play around with those other two numbers. Yeah, did I have a question?
Yes. I was gonna ask, like in exam, like, can you come back to the question which you don't answer?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Yep, you can bookmark it. That email that you guys have from Lane, that you click on the Zoom link to access class every night, within that email is a tutorial to class marker. So
Okay.
class marker is where you're going to take, so it's like a 4-minute video or something like that. So take a few minutes and click on that class marker tutorial, and that can tell you what to expect for your end of course exam next week.
Well, thank you.
Let's see. How do we know what to enter in the good question. Good question. So I got a question about, you guys know, first off, you can't use the smart calculator on your smartphone, right? We can't let you use your phones for the exam. Why? Because your phone has Google. So you need a basic calculator for your exam. This is not as smart as my phone. So you need to make sure you put, your phone's a lot smarter than this thing. So you need to make sure you're doing it right. And to know the order, you know, and this is where we have like this line right here, this divide. So in this first scenario on my calculator, I took 3,000 and then I hit my divide by key. And then I said 3%. I knew what order to do that because I knew where the line is. And then the second problem, I knew to multiply again where the line is. I multiplied the 3,000 by 3%. So how do you know where to put it? You go where the line, whatever the line tells you to do. Does that make sense? Think of that. How do you convert a fraction to a decimal? Let's say, for example, you have 1/4. How do you convert that to a decimal? What that's saying is 1 divided by 4. And that's what I'm saying right here with this, that fourth line on my T-bar. So let the line guide you. Also remember, y'all ready for a blast from your past? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You guys remember Aunt Sally? What's Aunt Sally teach us? Order of operations. Parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. The good news is we don't deal with parentheses and exponents in this class. So you multiply, you divide, you add, and you subtract. If you want to know the order to go, remember Aunt Sally. Woo, did we just go way back in time? Aunt Sally still applies today. So let's look at a couple examples. First off, I do want to spend a few minutes talking about this because I feel like seller net can have some confusion. Seller net is unit 8, Unit 8 math, part of Unit 8 math. And when we're talking about seller net, we're dealing with a whole lot. Seller net, we're trying to determine, what do I have to sell your house for in order for the seller to net X amount? Remember earlier I talked to my seller, I don't care as long as I make X amount. I had to make sure I sold that man's house in order for him to pay off his bills, pay off his expenses and his debt, pay me, and still put X amount in his pocket. Seller net. So the question you're going to see, and we're getting ready to do one together. The question you're going to see with these is going to ask you what the sales price is. Sales price goes where? Bottom left. That's going to be our X. The number that goes on top is the seller net, i.e., how much do they want to make? When it's all said and done, after everybody's paid, what's the amount of the check that the seller wants to receive from the proceeds of their sale? So their seller net plus all of their expenses, all their liens, all their loans, repairs, seller pay closing costs, all their expenses and debts. This is important. Please listen to me. All of their expenses and debts except commission. Commission never goes on top. Don't worry. I will get you paid in just a second. Our commission never, ever, ever goes on top. So the number on top is all of their expenses and debts plus what they want to net. Everything except commission. Y'all make sure you write that down. Commission does not go on top. Seller ratio or seller rate. This is the percentage that the seller expects to collect. So let's think about pie. And this is really mean to do 30 minutes before lunch, so I apologize. But let's talk about pie. Let's say that the whole pie represents the sales price. The pie is 100%. The pie belongs to the seller. Yes, the seller is selling the home for the sales price. So the 100% pie belongs to the seller. Let's say the seller agrees to pay, make a number up, 7% commission. Making numbers up. If the seller agrees to pay 7% of commission, they are giving you a piece of their pie. So the seller's rate or the seller's ratio is going to be whatever's left. So why don't you guys tell me in a chat, if your seller is giving you 7% of their pie, what's the seller's rate going to be? If they're giving you a piece of their pie, a 7% piece of their pie, what's the seller's rate? What's the seller's percent? How much are they going to keep? So if the seller's giving you, remember the whole pie represents 100%. So to find the seller rate, we always take 100% minus the piece of pie that they're giving you, which means the seller's going to keep 93% of the pie for themselves. As hungry as you are, the seller is hungrier. They're the ones with the sales price. And this is where we factor in our commission because of that 7% piece of pie. Does that make sense? Commission does not go on top. Commission is figured when the seller gives you a piece of their pie. Once the seller gives you a piece of their pie, they're going to keep whatever's left. In this case, 93%. 100 minus 7. So it's only fun, so much fun to hear me talk about it, right? So here's a math problem about seller net. Why don't you guys take just a few minutes? And if you want to share with your answer with me, just make sure you do it in a private chat so you don't give the answer away to everybody. Take a few minutes to look at it and then we'll talk about it together. You got one more minute, just because I'm trying to watch our time. If you're not done, I apologize. I want to watch our time and get as much in as we can. So let's go ahead and see what we got. When we first see a math problem, as with any problem, first thing we do is just stop and read. Just read the problem. Sit on your hands if you have to, but just stop, breathe, and read the problem. So Murphy calls you to list his home. At the listing appointment, he tells you he has to walk away with no less than $65,000. He agrees to offer $2,500 in closing costs and needs to pay off his existing mortgage of $135,000. Murphy agrees to pay 5% commission, which you will split with the selling agent. What is the minimum Murphy's home can sell for in order for him to net $65,000? I read the problem and I saw the word rate or percent. And my brain said, ooh, I might be able to use a T-bar. So I read the problem and I threw down a rate or percent. I threw down a T-bar. Sorry, I saw rate or percent. I threw down a T-bar. What's the problem asking me for? The problem's asking me for the minimum sales price, isn't it? The problem's asking me for the sales price. I think when we're doing math, if we can identify our X first, it helps us to stay focused. You guys, I'm sure, have seen math problems where there's more numbers in there than what you need. Those extra numbers are called distractors. Do you know what a distractor's job is? To distract you. Yeah. So how do you beat distractors? You stay focused on that X. You stay focused on what you're solving for. If the information doesn't get you what you need, then it's a distractor and you can put it aside. So I identified my X. If this information doesn't get me to the sales price, then it's a distractor and I don't care about it. Okay. So let's look at the number on top. The number on top is the net. How much does Murphy want to walk away with, plus all of Murphy's expenses and debts. So Murphy, when this is all said and done, wants a check in his pocket for $65,000. Everybody good with that? That's what we mean by seller net. When you hand Murphy his check and say, congratulations, you just sold your home, that check is going to say for $65,000. Good so far. Okay. In addition to net, we need to take into account all of Murphy's expenses and debts. So Murphy has agreed to pay $2,500 in closing costs, and Murphy has to pay off his existing mortgage. Murphy cannot convey title with outstanding liens on the property. So we're going to add up his net plus all of his expenses and debt, everything but commission, and the number we're going to put on top is $202,500. Then we need to figure out Murphy's ratio or Murphy's rate. Draw pictures, you guys. You guys like pictures? I like pictures. I'm a visual person and it helps me. Y'all get scratch paper, use it. So Murphy's piece of the pie, Murphy's pie is 100%, and Murphy has agreed to give me 5% of his pie. So what's Murphy going to keep for himself? Murphy's going to keep 100 minus 5. Murphy's going to keep 95% of the pie for himself. Back fourth line means what? Divide. So you take 200 on your calculator, take 202,500 divided by 95%, And we are told that we need to sell Murphy's house for no less than $213,157.89. By selling Murphy's house for no less than that, it makes sure that Murphy pays those closing costs, that Murphy pays off his mortgage, that Murphy pays me and you, and Murphy walks away with $65,000. If we sell his house for less than that, Murphy's not going to get $65,000 because he still has to, he's agreed to do the closing costs. He has to pay off that mortgage, and he has a listing agreement saying he's agreed to pay you 5%. So when we say the minimum sales price, 1 penny under this comes out of Murphy's pocket. If you sell his home for less than this, do you have a happy Murphy? Do you have a happy client? No, because you told them you could get him 65. Anything more than this, do we have a happy Murphy? Yeah, because now he's getting more than 65%, right? Do you guys think this is a common question for sellers to look at agents? Ask, can you net me X amount? Or if you sell my house, how much am I going to get? Do you think that's common for sellers to ask that? You better believe it. So having this understanding of seller net. Now, let me ask you guys something. Cool. And first off, if you didn't get the right answer, 213,157.89, if you didn't get it, do you see where you went wrong? And of course, that's rhetorical. If you didn't get it, do you see where you went wrong? Because that's how we learn. Sometimes you have to make mistakes to learn. And I know, guys, I get it. We don't like making mistakes. I get it. But guess what? Sometimes that's how we learn. So as long as you learn from your mistakes, we're good. So let me ask you guys this. You're at this appointment with Murphy. You determine in order for him to net $65,000, you have to give sales price, minimum sales price of $213,157.89. Are you going to guarantee Murphy you can sell his house for this? Are you going to make promises and saying, oh yeah, this is a breeze, I can do this? I'm seeing head shaking. No, not yet. Now that we have a proposed sales price in mind, now we need to go or do our comparative market analysis and make sure that the comps, that the neighborhood will support this sales price. You guys with me? So before you start making promises, we need to do our research and make sure that you can. It's possible to sell his house. What if you do your CMA and you get a probable sales price of $165,000 to $170,000? You gonna sell Murphy's house for $213,157.89? I mean, maybe in this market, but let's pretend that this market doesn't exist. Is it feasible to sell his house? Not in this neighborhood. Does that make sense to you guys? So now that we know Murphy's debits and expenses, now that we know Murphy's debt, now that we know the minimum sales price, now we need to do a little bit more research and make sure that we can sell his house for this amount. If you can't, if you don't believe in your heart of hearts that you can sell it for $213,157.89, you may not want to take this listing. You don't have to take every listing that's presented to you. If the seller has unreasonable expectations, I don't know a lot in life, but one thing I do know is that the numbers don't lie. So when the numbers are looking at you saying 165, 170, it'd be very, very hard to sell for $213,157.89. Kind of see how this is working. We got a lot to do when we first meet with sellers. Question comes in, and I may not be understanding your question because you and I can't do an appraisal unless you are a licensed appraiser. So you and I do a CMA to determine probable sales price. The appraiser is the one. Okay, all right. So now, thank you. So now can we have an appraiser? Absolutely. Absolutely. What if you and the seller are way off? Or what if the property doesn't conform? What if it doesn't match its surrounding and a CMA can't get you the information? You can absolutely suggest that the seller have an appraisal done to find that appropriate sales price. Firm policy, your firm policy may dictate that as well. Questions on seller net and kind of how we can use the T-bar?
I have a question, Ms. Julie. Is there any way and do one where we can find the ratio instead of the sales net and the sales price?
Yeah, so this one may not be a good example of that because, I mean, you know, I'm in a good mood. So for your test, you're going to be asked to find, you know, the sales price. So, and actually, sure, why not? Let's pretend, y'all want to pretend? Let's pretend that the problem tells you seller net and seller expenses are 202, 500. And the problem tells you that the sales price is 213, 157. Oh, 213, 157, 89. And it asks you what the ratio is. So it has to give you two of the three variables. Everybody with me? It has to give you two of the three variables. So in this pretend scenario, it does not tell us that Murphy's paying 95% commission. Instead, it tells us what the minimum sales price is. So now how we would solve for X, again, the back fourth line means divide. So on your calculator, take 202, 500, divide it by 213, 157, 89. And on your calculator, you get something that looks like this. Yes? When you take 202, 500 divided by 213, 179, you get 0.95. That is the rate. If you want to convert a rate to a percent, you move the decimal over 2 places. So your rate questions, if they're asking you to solve for rate, they're either going to be in the form of a rate, 0.95, or the form of a percent, 95%. They're never going to give both of these as two different answers. It's going to be rate or percent. I mean, they're mean, but they're not cruel because both of them are right. 0.95 is the same thing as 95%. With all that being said, I may have just introduced you to the tilt T-bar and you may be very excited. Y'all still don't spend all your study time on math, okay? I didn't say ignore the math and not look at it at all, but between now and I think your test is Thursday, is that right? Between now and whenever your test is, y'all study stuff other than the math. Fair enough? Everybody promise me that? The math alone can't fail you. Use it to your advantage. Use it to get some of it. The last thing I want to talk about in our 12 minutes together, I'm going to skip around just a bit. Again, you're getting the PowerPoints, but I want to talk about prorating. And I want to make sure that we're good when we prorate. So there's a couple different scenarios when we prorate. First off, if you're prorating something, you're sharing an expense. Let's say you buy my house today. Is it fair for either one of us to pay the whole year's taxes? I only owned it till April. You didn't own it until after April. Is it fair for either one of us to have to pay the whole expense? No. So how do we make it fair? We prorate it. All we're doing when we're prorating is sharing an expense. And there's a couple different scenarios for when you prorate. The first scenario of prorating is taxes have been paid. Once again, I'm a visual person. I like pictures. So if I'm prorating this year's taxes, I'm looking at my annual timeline of this year, remembering in pre-licensing world, all months have 30 days. No, I'm not going crazy. All months have 30 days. So how many days are in December in pre-licensing world? 30. How many days are in February? 30. How many days are in October? 30. We don't get to celebrate Halloween in pre-licensing world. Okay, they took that away from us. So all months have 30 days. I have my timeline. And let's pretend that we're going to go to closing on, I don't care, pick a date, November 29th. The day of closing is what divides our timeline. The seller owns the property the front part of the year. The buyer owns the property the latter part of the year. So I have my visual, I have my image, I can see my year's taxes, the dividing factors, the day of closing. Seller owns the property the front part of the year, buyer owns the latter part of the year. When you're prorating, anytime you're prorating between the buyer and the seller is responsible for the day of closing. So who gets to pay taxes on November 29th? The seller.
Seller.
Yep. So the seller's responsibility is from the first of the year to the day of closing. The buyer's responsibility is the day after closing to the end of the year. The problem, we usually tell you if taxes have or have not been paid. If taxes have not been paid, taxes have not been paid. Let me rephrase that. If taxes have not been paid and it's after September, when it comes to taxes, what's significant about September? Why does September matter? Why do we care about September?
They need to be paid by then.
They don't need to be paid by then.
Is it when it's
The
billed?
taxes change.
That's when the bill comes out, is in September, right? So if your closings before September, it may or may not tell you that taxes have been paid. But if the bill hasn't even come out yet, can they be paid? No. My closing's after September, so it's gonna have to tell me taxes have not been paid. And if taxes have not been paid after September, actually after September, what we're gonna do is what's called a double debit. After September, taxes have not been paid. We do a double debit, which means the seller is debited for their portion, however many days this is, the buyer is debited for their portion. Double debit. After September, after the bill comes out. What if? What if closing is before September? What's today? Let's go to closing today. Closings before September. We go to closing today on April 23rd. Seller still owns the front part of the year, buyer still owns the latter part of the year, right? Our dividing factors, our day of closing. Taxes have not been paid. The problem may or may not tell me that, but I know they've not been paid because on April 23rd, the bill hasn't even come out yet. Everybody with me? Everybody hear me? If the taxes have not been paid before December, then the seller owes the buyer for their portion of the taxes. Debit the seller, credit the buyer. In this scenario, we're going to figure the seller owns for 30 days in January, 30 days in February, 30 days in March, plus 23 days in April. The seller owes the buyer for January 1st to the day of closing. The seller will get to pay February 23rd. Count up your days. Take your annual taxes and divide by 360. Why 360?
A year.
That's how many days in the year?
Because in pre-licensing world, there's only 360 days a year, right? What's 30 times 12? 360. So in pre-licensing world, they're 30-day month, 360-day year. You take your annual taxes, divide by 360 to get daily, times it by the number of days. What if we go to closing? Let's again go to closing later in the year. Let's go to closing on November 27th. Seller owns first part of the year, buyer owns latter part of the year. But now this time we're told that taxes have been paid, which means the bill came out in September and the seller has already paid this year's taxes. When it comes to prorating, I always like to stop and ask myself, who owes whom? If the taxes have been paid, then the buyer owes the seller for the period of time that they own the property, which starts tomorrow through the end of the year. You got to pay attention to these problems, don't you? You got to pay attention to when was closing, has the bill came out, have taxes been paid, have taxes not been paid. I want to say one more thing. I know I'm watching my time, but I want to say one more thing. When it comes to counting forward on the timeline when we're prorating, it's really easy to look at this and say there's 2 days left in November and 30 days in December. So the buyer owes the seller for 32 days. And if you did that, you just got it wrong. When it comes to counting forward, I have a very highly sophisticated method to make sure that you get the number of days right. And when you're counting forward on the timeline, I want you guys to literally count on your fingers. I want you to count it out on your fingers. You're going to count November 28th, November 29th, and November 30th. How many days are left there? 3 days in November plus 30 days in December means that the buyer owes the seller for 33 days. It's so easy to see November 28th and see that there's 2 days left in November. So count it out. The buyer owes the seller for November 28th, November 29th, November 30th, plus the 30 days in December. Ain't no shame in count on your fingers. You got them, go for it, use them. Again, you take your annual taxes, divide by 360 to get daily. You take that a daily amount times 33. Whatever that is, you have a debit to the buyer, credit to the seller for that amount. All you're doing when you're prorating is you're keeping it fair. You're making it fair between the two parties. I think taxes is the biggest example that we use for prorating. Other things that we can prorate HOA dues. HOA dues may be monthly, they may be quarterly, they may be annually. The problem will have to tell you. We can also prorate rent. Let's say, again, you're buying my house today, and I got a tenant and existing lease in place. You buy honoring that existing lease. Rent is typically paid for the month, and rent is paid on the 1st. Unless you're told otherwise, then your problem. Rent is paid on the 1st. Again, the dividing factor is the day of closing. Seller owns the front part, buyer owns the latter part. The seller has received all of rent for the month of April. Today, the tenant is the seller's. Tomorrow, the tenant is the buyer's. I guess tomorrow we need to call him the new owner now, don't we? So tomorrow, the tenant is the new buyer's. So we would need to prorate rent. The seller would owe the buyer, debit the seller, credit the buyer for the period of time that the buyer owns the property. The seller would have to give the buyer some money at settlement to make up for rent. How many days is that? The 24th, 25th, 26th, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So the seller would owe the buyer for 7 days of rent. Question comes in, paid or not, the seller owes the day of closing, correct? When you are prorating between the buyer and the seller. When you're prorating between the buyer and the seller is responsible for the day of closing. Prorating. Questions? Comments, concerns?
Can you repeat that part where you said it's debit to the seller and credit to the buyer?
Right here.
No, on
So
top.
this
Yeah, right there.
here,
Yes.
no, here.
Yes, right
So
there.
it depends if it's a debit to whom, a credit to whom. It depends on if they have been paid or have not been paid. Have not been paid prior to September. It's going to be a debit the seller, credit the buyer. Have been paid, it'll be debit the buyer, credit the seller. Not been paid after September, double debit.
Okay. Thanks.
It depends. You got to read these questions carefully. Yes, thank you. If I don't have your email in the chat, please make sure you leave me with that if you haven't sent it already. Recording, PowerPoints, quiz, letter about dates of when you get your license. That's what I got today. This is 1:00, so we are all set. Thank you guys for your time this morning. I know spending a Saturday morning with me may not have been your ideal, but at least you have the rest of the afternoon to go outside and play. So y'all don't spend all your waking hours between now and next Thursday studying. You've got to put the book down every once in a while. Now, with that being said, did I just say don't study between now and Thursday? Yeah, you got to find that balance, right? You got to find that balance. Just don't spend all of your time studying, okay? Go put the book down. It's nice outside. Go get some fresh air and some sunshine as well. Best of luck to you guys on Thursday. I'll be in touch later today, this evening, with that email. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you guys in post-licensing.
Thank
That'll
you.
be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Thank
day.
you, Julie.